Guess we're ready to go, and we have, I think, Zoom participation. So good morning. This is a meeting of the East Bay Wildfire Coalition of Governments. I am John Joya, serving as the chair from Contra Costa County. A quorum is 5 members. Actually, if you look at the agenda, Rodeo Hercules is no longer a member since they have been annexed into ConFire. So there are 10 there are 10 jurisdictions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 jurisdictions. So quorum is 5. And just to note, Alameda County Supervisor Fortunato Bass will be here shortly. She's fighting traffic. She texted me and said she will be here soon. So may we have roll call? I will do the roll call, I guess. Okay. Alameda County, again, supervisor will be here shortly. City of Berkeley.
Here.
City of El Cerrito. City of Oakland.
Present.
And we wish you the best on getting better as soon as possible, council member. City of Pinole. City of Richmond.
Here.
City of Hercules. Contra Costa County, I am here. So with that, we do have a quorum. First would be approval of our minutes of July 23rd. So we did have a Berkeley representative by Zoom at the meeting. So Robert, we will we'll list him as members present for those minutes. Any other comments on the minutes by any of the members here?
I have a procedural question.
Sure.
Usually I abstain from the minutes if I wasn't present for the meeting, but do we need all
I
of
think
us
so,
to vote
yes.
for it?
And you can, as you know, you can technically vote.
I will,
even though
I'll
you
vote for it.
Got it. Thank you. So that'll allow us to move on from that. Okay. Any?
Minutes.
Okay. There's a motion. And is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. And any public comment on the minutes? No public comment. All right. So with that, we have to do roll call since we have Zoom here. I'll do this. So we don't officially have a clerk, so I'll do it. Alameda County, still not here. Contra Costa, yes. City of Berkeley.
I'll take your word for it. Yes.
City of El Cerrito.
Yes.
City of Oakland. Janani?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, didn't mute.
No problem. City of Pinole. City of Richmond.
Yes.
City of Hercules, not here, so minutes pass. Chair's report, be very short because we want to get into our presentations. Just to note, I think the biggest news is that the Contra Costa Fire District Board, on which I serve, did vote to take on our coalition as the fiscal agent. So Chief Burchard is here. Did you want to say anything about that, Chief? Other than, you know, we're now, you're our fiscal agent. For later. Yes, yes. So city managers should have gotten those. If they haven't, let me know. We sent them by email. So the dues, correct. Okay, great. And just to note, Councilmember Alex Walker Griffin from Hercules has arrived. So we were just going over the chair's report. So that's all I really wanted to report. Want to leave enough time for our presentations. Item 4 is Contra Costa County Coordinator Program. So we wanted to really get a presentation about what we're doing in Contra Costa, and hopefully I think Alameda may be beginning to do this, and how we can have these contacts between Alameda and Contra Costa continue to take a more active role in the work that we're doing. So we're lucky to have Michelle. Where's Michelle? There she is. Come on up, Michelle Reinhardt. Originally, we funded Michelle's position through a grant, right? And now you're being funded out of, is it Measure X or other general fire funds?
Actually, we've entered into the second cycle of
So you did get a
funding.
second grant. Okay. I thought there was a period of time in which maybe there was non-grant money funding your position for a while.
It was Measure X funding
Right.
from January until May of
Right.
this year.
We felt that this was a very important position to have. And using our general fund money, or sales tax money, was important to keep you on board. We're glad we did, and we now have grant funding. So go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Joya and the board. I appreciate your words, Supervisor Joya. It is important in this work that it be continued without interruption. So I thank all of you and appreciate your willingness to hear about the county coordinator program and how we fit into the overall goals, the state legislature, regional infrastructure, and local connection. That is what really makes the difference. As the county coordinator, I am tasked with providing public education on current programs, often in partnership with ConFire's public education team and our agency partners. One example is this collaboration will be our open house on October 11th between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. More information is available on our Facebook page. Secondly, is locate additional grant funding to support projects and mitigation groups located within Contra Costa County. And third is to serve as a resource to assist in public engagement. Today would be an example of that effort. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The role is made possible through a pass-through grant from CAL FIRE to the California Fire Safe Council, where Contra Costa County Fire Protection District applied and was awarded the grant based on its need. Our program is meant to leverage the existing partnerships between residents, governments, and fire departments. This program utilizes CCI funds or California Climate Investment Funds, specifically cap and trade dollars, to strengthen the economy, improve public health and environment, with a focus on disadvantaged communities. More information on the CCI program can be found through the California Fire Safe Council website. Next slide, please. So launching in 2021, each county coordinator has a basic approach that adapts to the participant needs within their county. The basic premise of the position is to educate, encourage, and develop countywide partnerships with both residents and HHC partners in mind. Speaking of partners, we have a new addition to our team. More about this Alameda County Coordinator position will be Shauna Lee Gallagher and retired Assistant Chief Chris Pinto following our video. Go ahead and play the video. The video didn't play. I can go ahead and send that in follow up.
The bottom line is Alameda County now has a county coordinator position, and we'll talk
Absolutely.
about Chris. Chris, good to see you. Maybe we'll later have you come up and say a few words. Okay. Yeah. After Michelle, how's that?
So I've included the contact information for both Contra Costa and Alameda County coordinators. Please keep in mind that if we do not immediately answer, we're often engaged with the public, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Chris and Shauna Lee, if you'd like to come up and speak.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
You're well. Yes.
I'll be very brief. I'm new to this position, so I don't have a lot to report yet. But I will say that I'm building my work plan for the next year of this grant-funded position I'm in, and that I'll have more to report in coming meetings. But right now, I'm just building out the work plan. And I've been collaborating with Michelle in Contra Costa County, and I'm kind of excited. I'm really excited. I see this as an opportunity to connect residents with our fire agencies, with our leaders within our community. And that's kind of our goal, is to just really become smart and connected as communities. So I'm excited about getting started.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
And Supervisor Fortunato Bass, thanks for having on the Alameda County side now, right? A similar position. It's great because we work together. Yeah.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So with the support of Governor Newsom and the California State Legislature, the 25-26 budget will provide $9.5 million for the County Coordinator Program. Delivered in partnership between the California Fire Safe Council and CAL FIRE, the program will establish critical capacity now with the addition of Chris Pinto, with 53 out of 58 counties with dedicated coordinators to, again, secure funding, implement mitigation projects, engage vulnerable populations, and build resilience in high-risk communities. This graph provides a visual explanation of the framework for fire-adapted communities. Another county coordinator resource which highlights the various components that make up the work for the community wildfire practitioners. This shows the complexity and multifaceted nature of each county coordinator. This is not a job. This is a calling. We are placed in these positions to engage each part of this strategic wheel, addressing specific areas of each at-risk community and bringing them the resources necessary to support them in all three phases of any disaster, either preparedness, response, and recovery. Next slide, please. The 2020 fire season broke numerous records. 5 of California's 6 largest fires in modern history burned at the same time, destroying thousands of buildings, forcing hundreds of thousands of people to flee their homes, and exposing millions of residents to dangerously unhealthy air. More than 4 million acres across the state burned, double the previous record. What can we do? This presents a rather helpless reality. This is the most frequent question I hear from the public. The Wildfire Resilience Action Plan aims to provide more holistic and integrated approach towards effective forest health and community resilience, and how Contra Costa is meeting the plan's goals through our strategic initiatives. More about that from Chief Bachman in a moment. Throughout the county, the fire jurisdictions are working to create best practices and forge cohesive messaging that residents can easily follow. Utilizing a statewide network of regional partners, regional plans to ensure coordinated and comprehensive action throughout our state. Creating economic opportunities for the use of forest materials that store carbon, reduce emissions, and contribute to a sustainable local economy. We are making strides towards fire adaptability, but we need to improve capacity and efficiency. Zone 0 regulations have been a large part of recent conversations, and this has caused a great deal of concern for most at-risk residents. Those that are trying to figure out how to make ends meet, put food on the table. We are looking to provide concrete solutions well in advance of a disaster to give people time to adjust. And hopefully we won't run out of time. More details about one path of resistance. I turn that over to Assistant Fire Chief and Fire Marshal Chief Bachman of the Contra Costa County Fire Protection District. Next slide, please.
Good morning. So I'm going to talk about those strategic initiatives that we've implemented. 2 of those have been applying for grants, one through CAL FIRE, the East Richmond Heights Shaded Fuel Break, and the other, the Hatsford Heights Shaded Fuel Break, which was applied for with the through the California Fire Safe Council. We're building FireWise USA programs. Currently, we have 143 Contra Costa County neighborhoods that are either in good standing or pending status. This is an incredible number considering that this summer, California made an announcement that they were ecstatic that they had just reached the 1,000 mark for a number of FireWise communities throughout the entire state. And when you think about that, that we're encompassing over 10% of that 1,000 number, that's an incredible feat that we've been able to increase our FireWise neighborhoods throughout our county. And we've also increased the resident participation in Contra Costa County through the mitigation program. This is funded through Measure X. Go to the next slide, gives a breakdown of those details. So between, we're on our second year of reporting to this, we've completed from July 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025, we've completed 80 projects, which are fuel reduction throughout the county. We've improved egress and ingress routes for residents, including fire trail cleanups. The 100 projects have also been identified that are still being evaluated, which are resident-driven projects, partners that are driven through our cities and agencies that join us, along with a mitigation focus. We've also done 106 dead tree removals in the last year. Total, we're at over 200. The important thing I would note is any agency tackles this of removing of dead trees is to make sure you're meeting the notice of exemption that you filed that, along with we are tracking every type of tree, location of tree, and documenting the status of it. We're then reporting that on to Contra Costa Sustainability Commission so they can apply for grants to replace those trees that have been removed. I've just asked them not to replant the trees in that general vicinity because there's probably a reason that that type of tree or that tree has died off. But there's that great partnership and collaboration that we work with the Sustainability Commission. So today we have in the last year 191 acres mitigated. The reason we're tracking the acreage is the previous year, I believe the number was just over 100. So our number is down, but the acres is up. And the reason is we're starting to see larger projects, bigger areas that we're tackling. So that's why we're tracking the total acres that we've mitigated moving forward. I'd also like to add that Contra Costa County Fire Protection District received a 2025 honorable mention at the from NFPA at the Wildfire Mitigation Awards, which was at the WUI conference in March of 2025 for our efforts with this mitigation program.
And WUI stands for Wildland Urban Interface?
Yes.
Okay, just so we understand. Okay.
If I could go to the next slide. And the last slide I want to explain is a GIS or mapping system that we've come up with to identify the total projects that have been applied for and completed. As I mentioned, we have over 100 projects that are in the queue or in our system. So when you go to that QR code and apply for a project, it goes into the system. It's sent to the fire marshal for that fire district. They grade it, evaluate it, and rank it. And as we're moving around the county with two different contractors, one is Powers Forestry, the other one is Civicor or Crew 12. We prioritize and then give them the assign them a project based on what their scope and the type of work they can best do. So you'll see by colors, we have what type of project that's either been completed or applied for, along with the ones that have either been denied or withdrawn. It's important to track this so we're not just providing numbers to elected officials, residents, fire safe councils, and firewise communities. We're providing them with accurate data that show what the status is of the project, along with projects that we've completed throughout the entire county. This couldn't have been done without the help of, we started with the county GIS team to help us create this map. And we've actually now expanded it internally that our GIS team is able to keep this map operational moving forward. I'll move back to Michelle to finish the presentation on county coordinator. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. I want to let you know what a huge support the leadership of each jurisdiction throughout the county has been. We have several in the room today, which I truly appreciate. At a recent event with Assemblymember Buffy Wicks, each chief was placed on a panel and answered questions from the public.
Right here in this room.
Right here in this room. And what was amazing is to have a chief mention the county coordinator as a critical role in that process in public engagement. This brings me great joy and lets me know that I'm doing the right job in this community to bring wildfire safety to the residents and all community members. Again, what drives me is my personal background and history with fire. My grandparents lost their home due to wildfire. Not only did I see the initial trauma of that loss, but then again, the re-traumatization when we had to move through the insurance process and put a value on their worldly possessions. My grandfather was a casual pilot and a mechanic for United Airlines. And so he had gathered what my grandmother referred to as tchotchkes from around the world. And at the time, I'm dating myself, but at the time, to go through all of her tchotchkes and value them according to a JCPenney catalog. This wrote on the slate of the person I am. So we're here today to really talk about not only the program, but really identify and highlight the call to action, right? What can we do moving forward? Next slide, please. So we reviewed the local, state, and regional aspects of the program. And yes, I will continue to engage local, regional, and statewide mitigation groups. But really what the county coordinator position is about is looking at what statewide initiatives are where the statewide initiatives are taking place within each county, coordinating with each county coordinator and their successes, and highlighting our own and carrying that back to the state level. So really providing that local, state, and regional connectivity. And one of those successes, of course, is the wildfire mitigation program, which was made possible by our Contra Costa County voters, making that work possible. Next is community wildfire protection plans. So these are collaboratively developed at the local level with stakeholders, and then communicated to state and federal and tribal partners. CWPPs focus on reducing wildfire risk to not just people, but also homes, businesses, watersheds, cultural resources, infrastructure, natural ecosystems, and all other values and resources within that planning area that will be impacted. We saw recently in Eaton and Palisades how there was a ripple effect out into the community due to that wildfire. So really looking at planning in that first planning phase of disaster, identifying the infrastructure necessary to prepare for that response and recovery phase. Similar to our recent collaboration with the Contra Costa County Office of Emergency Services with the local hazard mitigation plan update, while that update evaluated all of the hazards in the county and our plan of response, the CWPP will focus specifically on wildfire. Again, all three phases will be addressed. The Diablo Fire Safe Council, one of our mitigation groups, actively participating regionally in both Alameda and Contra Costa. They're in the final stages of updating the regional priority plan. So all of our major wildfire and mitigation projects are then folded into the priority plan and partnered and put into the SCU or the CAL FIRE Santa Clara unit plan for pre-identification. This will help facilitate funding in the future. There's no doubt. Diablo Fire Safe Council, in spearheading the regional priority plan for Alameda and Contra Costa County, their funding comes from the California State Coastal Conservancy. ConFire is part of that steering committee in partnership with Diablo Fire Safe Council, and we've received a large number of proposals. So until the steering committee has the opportunity to review and prioritize each one of those projects, we're sitting on hold for this in the submission portal until we can really grasp what the status of each proposed project is. The next RPP stakeholder meeting is rescheduled for Thursday, October 16th at 11 a.m. More details can be found at www.diablofiresafe.org. I'd like to just mention that multiple jurisdictions and fire department leadership are also represented on that Diablo Fire Safe Council steering committee, and I work closely with all of them, and it's an honor to do so. Next slide. Some ideas of how the East Bay Wildfire Coalition can help. It really comes down to funding. Fire professionals know the path forward and are focused on the protection of life, property, and the environment. It's in all of our mission statements. By working together with the community, we can also create increased safety for responding crews. By reducing fuels ahead of a catastrophic fire, we will improve their chances of suppressing the fire. One thing is clear, fire can outrun response crews. We've seen this time and time again. By reducing fuels ahead of time, we increase the survival rate of residents, preserving critical infrastructure and the safety of all EMS personnel. Public education and awareness is often overlooked. Again, we're speaking in the funding capacity perspective. Knowledge is power. Really, those small things ahead of a disaster can influence better outcomes, such as creating defensible space, home hardening, and building homes that are resistant to ember intrusion. And finally, funding to support residents who do not have the tools to complete this work. Contra Costa residents have access to that program that Chief Bachman spoke about that receives $2 million annually, a little more than $2 million. Oftentimes that isn't enough to address the vital projects to meet our goals. Our goals between fire jurisdictions, residents, and this coalition are similar. Education, legislation, project management, which all require funding. That's what makes that wheel go round. So speaking of that wildfire action resiliency plan that I spoke of earlier, they have 4 main goals, and this is where the coalition can really help us. Increase the pace and scale of forest health projects, increasing prescribed fire, not only through the Contra Costa Regional or Resource Conservation District, they are making significant headway on this, but we're also looking to mobilize that regional action plan through the Diablo Fire Safe Council, allowing funding to occur for each one of those proposed projects, and then improve regulatory efficiency. Things like SB 131, how we were working with electeds to change and influence that legislative language, how that was ultimately rolled into the bill. That was a success for us, but we look to do more of that. Goal 2, strengthening and protection of communities. So supporting the community risk reduction and adaptation planning, again, recently identified in the hazard mitigation plan. As recently identified in the local hazard mitigation plan, but also working forward in the planning phase of the community wildfire protection plan, evacuation routes being one of them. Increasing fuel breaks. So East Richmond Heights, Hasford Heights, Lafayette, Walnut Creek Shaded Fuel Break, and North Orinda. Creating fire-safe roadways. Public Works is our strategic partner. We recently identified multiple evacuation routes for cleanup, and that was facilitated not only through the partnership with Contra Costa County Public Works, but also through our evacuation route project in the Measure X funded wildfire mitigation program. Goal 3, managing forests to achieve the state's economics and environmental goals. Integrate state forest management into state climate and biodiversity programs. Sustain and expand outdoor recreation. I know that the initiatives coming from this coalition encourage people to be out of doors. We want them to do that safely. Protection and expansion of the urban canopy. And then finally, goal 4, drive innovation and measure progress. Results-based accountability, accurate reporting, transparency with not only the public, but through our agency partners and funding partners is essential. Utilizing the best plan available through science and accelerated applied research. Expanding and improving monitoring and reporting, and allowing that reporting to leverage decision-making authority. So next slide, please. With that, thank you, board, and I look forward to your questions.
Great.
What we'd like to do is replay, make an attempt to replay that video for you. I think it will provide a nice wrap up to the county coordinator program overall.
Okay,
Thank you.
play the video. This is the same video that it's on that state website. Yeah. So if we can't see it, we can all go to the website, watch it later.
Yes,
Right.
but yes,
Nice to
it's,
see it here.
it's available
Nice.
in the California. Pride
Always
Week.
nice seeing, like being in a movie theater. It's we enjoying this collectively together rather than individually. Right.
Sure. It provides a really nice wrap up to the points that I have highlighted here and gives you a face and a name
Yeah.
in each county.
Okay.
No county boundary. It doesn't recognize what section of society you're from. It mows through everything. So everything that we do in our program reduces that fire risk.
We depend on being prepared and being ready for the next fire when it comes, not if it comes.
There's always been a lot of great folks doing this work.
But there has not been any countywide or regional coordination up until recently.
There's a lot of grassroots efforts being done, you know, at the individual community level. And there's a lot of efforts being made at the federal and the state level as well. And so the county coordinator position really is a platform to mesh the two.
The idea of the county coordinator program has always been a very good idea.
There'd be a project over here and a project down there because the funding sources would pay for those kinds of things. And it wasn't strategic.
It would be great if there were a person that could help bring all of these entities together. Thus, the county coordinator program was developed, and fortunately, we were able to help fund it.
In partnership with CAL FIRE and funded through the California Climate Investments Program, the California Fire Safe Council supports 52 county coordinators across the state to serve as the boots on the ground leaders in local wildfire resiliency. The program was started in 2021 with 24 county coordinators and has since grown to cover nearly the entire state of California. The coordinators act as the hub for wildfire resilience within their counties. They coordinate stakeholders. They bring voices to the table in the planning process that had never been spoken to before. They do community education, and they overall mobilize their communities to be able to do this critical work. What we have seen over and over again historically is that the communities with the most resources and the loudest voices, that's where the money flows.
The county coordinators have made a huge difference. There have been instances in counties that have never received grant funding that have received millions of dollars of grant funding as a result of that county coordinator.
Funding is going to coordinated strategic projects that are going to have a lasting impact on wildfire mitigation and community safety.
If you don't have capacity at the local level to do the work does not get done. And now we have some really hard data to show that adding a single full-time staff member in each county has been an incredibly effective way to start filling this gap.
What's unique about this program is a completely prevention focus on two levels, helping agencies working together, and then the other one, helping residents to move in that direction. All this funding coming from the California Fire Safe Council allows us to make that type of work take place.
Most of the grant projects seem to focus on attacking a goal here or a goal there, and the county coordinator grant program focuses more on collaborating.
It allows us to attend events, to go to community groups.
It allows, me as the county coordinator to go out and really get the community involved and engaged in fire safety, fire mitigation, home hardening, and all the other programs that the Fire Safe Council grant has provided us.
I have been able to further immerse myself in the communities, which has then allowed the communities to have a larger voice in their wildfire concerns throughout the county.
It has allowed us to leverage technology and bring this wildfire mitigation program to the residents who need it most.
To have that hub, that person that can connect the residents and the people in the community that we're serving with our partners, it is incredibly necessary.
It allows us to collaborate with agencies and organizations such as CAL FIRE, our Sheriff's Office, CHP,
You can't do this work siloed. It takes a team.
It is going to long outlive itself because we have created partnerships and collaborations that are going to continue long past this grant program.
As this current funding begins to come to an end, and when those county coordinators see that there's a finish line, they need to know that there's going to be another lap.
We're facing a reality where wildfires are only increasing in frequency and severity. If this program continues, we expect to see a coordinated and strategic wildfire mitigation strategy implemented across the state. Ultimately, this program will help us create vibrant and climate resilient communities. We want to thank our partners at CAL FIRE for their support in delivering this critical program. We also want to thank our county coordinators for their tireless work to help their communities live more safely with wildfire. The program has momentum. Great work is being done on the ground. We would like to see this program continue far into the future.
Great, thank you. And anything more you wanted to add, Michelle? Thank you for this presentation. I just want to say, having your position, I know in Contra Costa has added tremendous value. And it's great to see that Alameda County now has a similar position. So just a question or two, given that now, we are a coalition that was created by a MOU between 2 counties, and now it's 6 cities, so 8 jurisdictions. I think what we want to do is really try to leverage this body through the MOU, the 2 county coordinators in Alameda and Contra Costa. So one question is, funding is really important, and you talked about that. How do you see, let's say, our ability to jointly between the 2 counties, East Bay Hills, apply for funding now that the fire district's also the fiscal agent for projects? Do you think that puts us sort of in a better position? What suggestions do you have as Contra Costa and Alameda work together and have our MOU relationship here among jurisdictions? Because one of our goals is really trying to, as a region, right? Fire doesn't respect city and county boundaries. We understand that. How do we as a region put ourselves in a better position to apply for funding to achieve the goals that you talked about and that we've talked about?
Sure. And I really think, thank you for the question, Supervisor Joya. I really think that working together as between the coalition and the county coordinators, bringing funding regionally will have an overall benefit. So when the county coordinators identify grants, I think a letter of support, letter of commitment, really working through each grant notice of funding opportunity, or also known as NOFO, to really look at each funding opportunity as a potential partnership, not only through our fire safe councils, but through the coalition, really bringing partners together. I usually, I've said this often before, prior to the county coordinator program looking at things regionally in partnerships, we had these random acts of mitigation, right? There were really strong efforts in very localized areas. And what CAL FIRE really looks at now in grant funding on also the federal level, really looking at that connectivity between projects. So rather than those random spot mitigation projects, really how we're going to join them together. I think through funding through local mitigation groups, regionally, El Cerrito being one of them, really looking at a shaded fuel break and how that can be extended with additional funding.
What we're interested in too is, right, large grants that cover both areas, right? That
Sure.
They may be grants that cover specific parts of the East Bay Hills or wider areas of East Bay Hills across Contra Costa and Alameda County. And how do you see working with Alameda now with your counterpart?
Oh, I love working with Alameda. I have a tough time calling him Chris.
Right.
I have a tendency to call him Chief, but Shauna Lee and the chief has been great supporters of my position. We've been working regionally. We've been looking to identify projects that we can work on together, one of them being the qualified entities training. Another area is, I just want to talk about funding for one brief moment and how we're going to work regionally in the future. The overall federal funding picture drastically changed, right? We're all well aware of that. But also the budget for the state has changed. what the future holds for us has really yet to be seen. Does it move in more of a block granting structure?
And we have our state senator here who's going to later give an update on legislation. So this is good. Good combination here.
Well, this is how you're witnessing
Yeah.
how the county coordinator can achieve success through partnerships with coalitions and mitigation groups. How just a chance meeting can bring us together and really lead to beneficial projects and initiatives regionally wide, right?
Right.
So thank you for that
And,
opportunity.
and I know you do a lot of work with the fire safe councils. We have great fire safe councils across the 2 counties. It seems that having now a public agency MOU between, 8 and maybe more jurisdictions can also be a partner in strengthening on applying for these grants.
Absolutely.
Again, still working with fire safe councils, that's important, but you now have basically all the cities and fire districts, at least within a defined region, working together. And it seems that having also, we want to think about how having your 2 positions more aligned and doing work together. And this is great. I mean, this is why I wanted to have this presentation now that both counties have one, right? How, in a sense, you're like part of what we're doing. We're all aligned. I mean, our many of our jurisdictions are in your fire districts, right? So how we can sort of have both your involvement on a sort of even stronger basis for this for this agent, for our coalition.
Sure. I love that. I really feel that we're on a launching pad here. We can bring all of the strategic partners together, again, depending on the funding opportunity, and really crafting a project that shows that regional partnership. And for any funder, that's always a plus.
Great. So open it to questions, and can be questions to either of you. So Supervisor. Nikki?
Yes, thank you so much for that presentation. Just thinking about the call to action being fundraising, among other things. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what the grant writing capacity is. It takes time to research grants, to write them, to get the letters of support. And as I've talked to some of the fire chiefs across at least the area I represent, there's different levels of staff capacity to do grant writing. So I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity here to sort of boost that capacity collectively.
So we do have the residents, recently there was a grant funding opportunity, and really thank you to the residents of East Richmond Heights and Hassford Heights for identifying those letters of commitment.
They worked really hard.
They worked very hard. So when you talk about what we can do, it starts locally, changing hearts and minds, showing what the possibilities are. But as we move forward, when we think about how we can exercise, how we can show a funder our capacity, it's through meetings like this where it all starts. We have to start the conversation and build from there. We're not to outline the exact steps for you moving in the future. We really have to identify each one of the partners and get everyone on board. I wish I had a better answer for you. Chief Buckman.
So Confire has been pretty successful in achieving several different grants at the state level, but I'll tell you that it isn't just writing the grant, it's managing it. And they do give you typically able to apply for administration fees to cover a portion of that. But the reporting is usually quarterly, even with the county coordinator. We have a heavy participation with our chief financial officer at Confire that is routinely in meetings with Michelle, making sure that we're meeting all those reports and that the budgets and invoices that we're asking for reimbursement at the state level are correct. So it's a lot more than just writing the grant. It's making sure that whoever's going to be the agency that's going to be the grant manager has that staff capacity to do those quarterly reports, track all the invoices, and submit for reimbursement. Occasionally, we will reach out to a consultant called Townsend to assist us in submitting grants, especially at the federal level. Usually at the state level, we'll submit our own. So we do have that piece that we can have a consultant assist us either in some of the grant writing or in the submission. But currently, as far as manage them, once we receive them, we do all the internal management of that grant within our own staff. In fact, we have a program that focuses nothing but grants throughout our entire organization, which also consists of some firefighters and captains on the line that assist on the side with that proposal. So kind of complex. I think each agency is different on what their level is to support that, but it's something definitely to keep in mind as we're applying for grants.
I think Vice Chair Ramachandran, who's here, had her hand up.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's very inspiring to see that this coordination and collaboration work is really being funded. I just had a quick question about the nature of grants that the county is able to apply for. So are they primarily in your work so far focused on vegetation management and coordination among fire departments, or does it also, or do some of your grant opportunities that you've been able to identify include an education component? Because that's one thing that that seems to be lacking in a lot of funding opportunities, that education piece.
So for the most part, we've been applying for vegetation management. The California prevention grants, we've applied for vegetation management. When we submitted our last application for the county coordinator and the portion that we received, we did identify a small piece of that. I believe it was just over 20,000 to be used for education, to create some professional videos to help explain and identify some of these new regulations that we know are going to be coming out at the state level, including Zone 0 defensible space and home hardening. So in the coming months, we will be creating some of those videos for education that's going to be around some of these new regulations that are coming out. And that is going to be funded through the county coordinator grant that we've received. Another grant that we've applied for was to update our CWPP. So that was really administration and planning. So it kind of is it's a wide mix of grants that we've applied for. A lot of them will say you can either apply for education or mitigation, or you can apply for a small piece. And the county coordinator was one that we did identify a small piece of that grant to go towards education.
Janani, you have anything else?
No, thank you. That's very helpful.
And just to follow up on that question, item 7 on today's agenda, we've talked about one of our priorities of developing a public information education campaign on Zone 0. Seems to me none of this work is done in silos. So as we look at that, I think we will want to look at how this can be done together. And we don't want to do things separately over here if you're doing something as well. So maybe as we talk about item 7, we can talk about how this 2-county effort is one voice right along the East Bay Hills. So we'll discuss that under 7. So you'll be here maybe to hear some of your thoughts, or will you be here when we talk? Good. So I just wanted to flag that issue because I think this is all related in hearing what you're doing. Yes, council member.
Thank you, Chair. Earlier in the presentation, I think it was Chief Bachman presented a GIS map of the projects that you're overseeing. I noticed, first of all, I love a good GIS map, so good job. I'm a data nerd. And I was looking at it and I noticed that the East Bay Regional Parks were part of the territory. Is that correct?
They are.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how that works. Is that considered part of Contra Costa County for the purposes of this program, or do you just, is there someone different that you coordinate?
So it is, and we don't have any reporting, but we are requesting it. We've had, we attended their last strategic plan meeting and have since also requested that we not only want to identify every project that they've completed in the last 3 years, but also what is the layout or the map of where that's at, whether they're gonna provide us with a handwritten map or a GIS layer, either one will work with. But we're requesting that we want to know not only every project they've completed, but a map of the area, because we plan on overlaying that and including that, because we routinely get that from residents as we're out showing our map and showing. So what you saw was drop pins of this is where the work's occurring. Well, we're going one level deeper and also providing a layer that actually shows the shade of the fuel break or the region that we've created this break or fuel reduction in. Some of it's along evacuation routes, other is behind subdivisions. We're following the same format that the state's using for CalMapper, with the goal that in the future, as CalMapper expands, they've identified strategically that they want to include local mitigation work, that we'll just be able to share that link and it will go live in CalMapper. So yes, absolutely. We want to include East Bay Regional Parks, and if Alameda County would like to extend that mapping into their county, I would recommend that we follow the same format that the state's using, because I think long-term strategically, we'll be able to have this mapping system all in one place.
Great approach. Thank you. I do hope we do the same thing in Alameda County. Actually, I am just a little bit more curious about how the coordinators do interact with. Sorry, I'm curious how the county coordinators do interact with the regional parks. Is it just this map of projects, or is there broader jurisdiction? Like, how is that relationship?
Sure. So East Bay Regional Parks jurisdiction is indeed under their responsibility and jurisdictional control. The way that I frequently interact with East Bay Regional Parks is through the Hills Emergency Forum and other mitigation groups that are meeting. And when there's questions from the public, we often converse about that. There's a great concern for eucalyptus trees along the western area of our county. And so if there's questions, there's a very open line of communication for me to be able to call any one of the members of leadership at East Bay Regional Parks and ask those questions, develop messaging that we can depend on moving forward and push out to the public. So it's really facilitating that communication back to the public, keeping them well informed in the light of transparency and accuracy.
Great, thanks. And just one last quick question. Is there a particular person with East Bay Regional Parks who's your contact person, or is it sort of depend on what the question is?
Chief Kari Haley and also Chief Patrick McIntyre.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, council member.
Thank you for the excellent presentation. Michelle, you've been a wonderful resource to the community. I honestly was hoping you mentioned your great work with regards to the fire safe councils as well. So there was not a mention of it. Don't be so humble.
I did hear her say fire safe councils.
Absolutely.
I was listening intently. I heard it.
The weight of the work she does with regards to fire safe councils is way more than was mentioned.
Thank you. And I think that that's a accurate representation of our experience together and how we work with the local jurisdictions to inform the community. I think your group with the West Contra Costa Fire Safe Council gives people a place to not just look at a resource list, but actually hear from the members of leadership. Our partnership with Richmond Fire, also Confire, East Bay Regional Parks, Caltrans, Phillips 66, and other partnered agencies, really bringing that message directly to the people. So thank you for your good work. I'd also like to acknowledge Sue Duncan with the El Cerrito Fire Safe and also the Diablo Fire Safe Council, of course. Looking forward, how we look to build fire safe councils. We've looked at several entities within Contra Costa, looking at their capacity and helping them understand what it is to build a fire safe council. And Councilmember Bana, you can speak to that because you have the lived experience, but really helping people understand before you come up with an idea to form a fire safe council, there are several competing interests that need to be managed. There are several priorities and responsibilities that need to be managed within a fire safe council. people may have great ideas, but how that carries out in the long term requires frequently your level of stamina, Sue Duncan's level of stamina and commitment to the overall wildfire preparedness and response.
Thank you. So I just wanted to thank you also Chief Buckman and Confire, who have been a great mentor, great help educating us. So in turn, we can educate the community. Wonderful.
I think you spend as much time in your role with the Fire Safe Council as you do on the city council. It's
A
like
little more.
two jobs, right? Yes.
Sure.
But despite all the work that Fire Safe Councils are doing, and congratulations to our sister organization in El Cerrito for becoming official, we receive no recognition, no acknowledgement, no support from California Fire Safe Council. So I'm very glad we have our Senator Oregon here, and we hope that with the help of our senator, Fire Safe Councils receive a bit more support from the state, because right now it's we're all volunteers doing tremendous work, connecting to the community, and forefront, we're educating them with regards to wildfire safety. Unfortunately, nothing. We are not at any table when it comes to decision making, policy making, even though we are the ones who, despite our limited knowledge, dare to think outside the box. We are in contact with our fire chiefs, with our residents, and try to, have that big scope. So we expect to, sorry, I'm changing hat to Chair of Fire Safe Council, but we expect to receive some recognition and some support at the state level. And the budget for Measure X is only $2 million. It has been for years. I hope that increases.
Actually, we spend $4.5 million a year on Measure X on wildfire.
Right, but that's whatever it is, it's not sufficient. We receive many requests that don't go through.
Just to
One example.
I want to be accurate. I'm on the Board of Supervisors. We allocate $4.5 million for wildfire. Plus, we allocated some additional money, I think it was $1 million on top of that. But you're right, it's not enough. But there's a lot of things getting funded right out. There's a lot of competition for money for Measure X, the county hospital, social services, mental health, a lot of things. So I think obviously the $4.5 million goes a long ways, and hopefully it leverages other things. But
Thank you.
yes,
So
it's
just
not
to give
enough.
you
Yeah,
one
yeah.
example,
Yeah.
we receive many requests regarding dying trees, but Measure X only takes care of dead trees. So we have to tell people, wait a couple of years or maybe more until the tree is absolutely dead, and then you can apply for it. If it's still dying, that doesn't work, which is not fair to the residents, because it may fall off. It's still that. Just one example. I don't want to, argue.
Michelle, you
about
wanted
it.
to say something. I know this is not a Measure X discussion, but go ahead, Michelle.
So thank you for the clarification, Supervisor Joy. I'd like to just dive deeper into that funding. So $2 million is for wildfire mitigation projects, and then $2.5 million is to support crew 12.
Right.
So
Which is to do vegetation control in wildfire areas.
yes, staffing and such. Thank you very much for that clarification. As far as the question that you asked, Ms. Bana, the California Fire Safe Council acknowledges all fire safe councils within the state on their website. Secondly, I think that what you're alluding to is more of the active participation in the CWPP process. And under the current grant for the county coordinator is really facilitating a plan for the plan, right? So not delivering a final CWPP full update, but really identifying those partners, really getting down on the regional level, identifying who wants to create the sustainability that's necessary for an update that is not a 1 or 2 session process, but a multi-session process, identifying a strategic plan in the years to come. So I look forward to working with you and your group and all fire safe councils, mitigation groups, and partner agencies in the coming years.
Thank you. Last question, if I may. Is there a mandate regarding clearing the evacuation routes? We've been working with you on that, but I'm just wondering.
Sure. So real quick on the dead tree topic.
And we have by the way, the next item is going to talk about red flag days dealing with evacuation. We will talk a little about that on item 5. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the Dead Tree project identified through the Wildfire Mitigation Program is indeed for trees that produce or could produce a risk to life and structure or ingress and egress of evacuees and responding crews. The trees located on a person's private property is indeed their responsibility. So when you own a property within any jurisdiction, your property remains your responsibility. However, those trees, dead trees in common or open space that produce a risk, again, to life and property, or PG&E, like PG&E lines, there's a lot of PG&E resources that have come out in their initiative. But yeah, really looking ahead, I think that we can have several topics that we can work on there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment on this item. We have a few we want to get to our other items here. Public comment. And just to wrap up, thank you. We look forward to strengthening the work of what we're doing in our MOU coalition and the 2 wildfire coordinators. I think this was a really good discussion, and I think there's a lot of basis for continuing to work together.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Stage. I'm the president of the Oakland Fire Safe Council, which has been doing this work for 10 years and would think it's fabulous to have more people join our efforts in Alameda County, because we can never have too many experiences and points of view to bring to our work. We've been working with the Claremont Canyon Conservancy for several years to help launch this regional effort. So our boundaries are not limited to Oakland or Alameda County. We actually understand and support the mission that you all are talking about. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Fire Safe Alliance. So he is a member, John Kaufman is a member, Sue Duncan is a member. I may have missed, Susan Wengraf is very active in the Berkeley Fire Safe Council, and we all have met with Senator Arguin. So I'm sorry if I missed anybody, but I think you might be interested in a study that was done by UC Berkeley, looking at the relationships between and among the agencies, fire, emergency services, elected officials, etc., and the community organizations, fire safe councils among them, but there's neighborhood groups that are very active in evacuation, Firewise groups, there's all sorts of community-based organizations. And they did a map, and roughly speaking, they presented the map like a couple weeks ago. The blobs that connect the community organizations are much stronger than the people who officially have responsibility for emergency services, fire, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, what I'm trying to say is we welcome all comers. We're here not to be the recipients and disseminators only. If Chief Covington asks me to send out a notice to everyone in our network in Oakland, I will do it. 99% of the time I agree with him, and I will do it.
Thank you.
Sometimes we need to give him ideas about how to make us safer. So I just want to broaden the perspective on the county coordinator role, because the counties are so important. Having several connections with the counties is really important, and we would like to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. Any other public comment? Okay, I want to acknowledge we have our state senator here, and I know item 6, you're okay with going through item 5, and I want to respect your time, or item 6, because we can go to the legislative update next. Item 5 deals with red flag days, things like that. 6 is your legislative update. We were going to have, so you were going to be part of that. Senator, so we can go to 6. So that way you have the choice of whether you, okay? So I know we have our vice chair and Susan also on legislative update, and we have our state senator. So I'm going to defer to our state senator to be the first, and you can all come up, but Senator, if you wanted to talk about updates that you've been involved, of course, with legislation that was part of the Golden State commitment on wildfire package. So you had a bill or bills in that. So we'll have you, and then we have Susan, and then we have our vice chair. Pardon? Yeah. So we'll have Jesse go first. How's that? Yeah.
Well, good morning.
Senator, sorry, Jesse.
Thank
Senator.
you, Mr. Chair, Senator Supervisor Joya, and my colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here. And I just want to thank the East Bay Wildfire Coalition of Governments for the important work you're doing to bring the counties and cities together, working with our first responders, working with community leaders on addressing the critical issue of wildfire safety and prevention. And I was very glad to have been part of helping establish this coalition when I was the mayor of Berkeley, working with John Kaufman and with community leaders and with my colleague, former council member Susan Wengraff. So it's really great to see this entity active in helping lead these important efforts in the East Bay. So I have just completed my first year in the California State Senate, and the issue of wildfire and wildfire safety, I think, really defined the work that we did this year. So as we know, on January 7th, 2025, the Palisades and Eaton fires became the most destructive wildfires in our state's history. And the fact that this disaster happened in the middle of the winter months, I think, dispelled the notion that wildfires are a seasonal issue, with climate change increasing the likelihood of devastating wildfires throughout the year. And particularly as well, that the issue of wildfires are not an issue that's specific to forests or to rural areas, but this was, I think, one of the most devastating urban wildfire events that happened in our country's history. These fires began on day 2 of our state's legislative session. And so we immediately shifted our focus to dealing with both the short-term and long-term actions needed to respond to this particular fire incident and to keeping our state safe going forward. As the fires were still smoldering, the state legislature passed $2.5 billion in funding for initial response and recovery efforts. And this enabled major debris removal, helping expedite the construction of homes, schools, and essential infrastructure. And the state also provided tax relief to victims, along with establishing other essential protections to support tenants, businesses, and survivors impacted by these fires. And so while we were responding to help the Southern California communities immediately recover to these incidents, we shifted our focus to how can we keep our entire state safer, and how can we increase our investments to focus on education, prevention, and that really framed the work that we did in developing the June budget. So I'm very proud to announce that the legislature had introduced this year around 90 bills related to wildfires, but half of them related to prevention and mitigation. 13 of those bills were part of the California State Senate Golden State Commitment, which adopted a number of bills related to tax and mortgage relief for impacted property owners, addressing price gouging, timely debris removal, streamlining the rebuilding of homes and healthcare facilities, and one bill in particular, Senate Bill 571, which I was a joint author of, that dealt with the issue of the impersonation of first responders during emergencies. Sadly, this was a reality in Southern California, where people wore firefighter uniforms, try to impersonate themselves as fire personnel or police personnel in order to get into evacuation zones and loot and commit crime, and further inflicting harm to people that have already lost so much as a result of these devastating fires. All those bills are on the governor's desk, and we're waiting to see what the governor Newsom sign those bills. But in addition to that, the state made, I think, unprecedented budget investments this year that I want to touch upon in a number of areas. First, as part of the June adopted budget, the state made a multi-year commitment and funding for fire prevention, including $1.2 billion this next fiscal year
and $500 million in the next 2 subsequent fiscal years. In addition to that Prop 4, the climate bond that the voters of California passed last year, has a commitment of $1.5 billion for fire prevention and forest health efforts. And so we are in the process of developing an expenditure plan for that initial tranche of funding as part of the Prop 4 bond. And then, as was touched upon in the previous presentation, part of the state's budget included $9.5 million for the wildfire county coordinators, which I think agrees it's been a very effective program. And as well, making sure that CAL FIRE has expanded resources and workforce capacity to deal with wildfire risks throughout the year. The state actually included funding to make seasonal wildfire positions to CAL FIRE permanent through $39 million this fiscal year and $78 million next fiscal year. On top of that, as part of the recent action that we took in the extension of the cap and trade program, the creation of what we now call Cap and Invest, $4 billion of the funding through Cap and Invest will go to wildfire risk reduction. And we just took action on that extension of Cap and Invest. And over the next few years, we'll be working to program those dollars to make sure that we can get money to communities throughout California to address wildfire risk reduction and fire prevention. So billions of dollars of funding that has been allocated either through Cap and Invest, through the general fund, through Prop 4, and those are dollars that are going to be directly available to communities throughout the state of California, including communities in the East Bay area. I continue to advocate to prioritize communities along the wildland-urban interface to make sure that they are receiving these grant dollars. So much of the money has historically gone to forest and wildlands and more rural areas, and not enough investment has gone towards the wildland-urban interface and addressing urban wildfire risk. And I have been working with my colleagues, including those in Southern California, about how we can prioritize funding for urban wildfire risk as we're working to develop these expenditure plans for how we allocate these dollars in the coming years. So significant budget investments the state has done to make our state safer, to address and mitigate wildfire risk. And then there are some bills of importance I just want to touch upon that have also passed or on the governor's desk. SB 326 by Senator Becker, my colleague, which would establish certain defensible space requirements. AB 1143 by Senator Bennett, the Home Hardening Certification Program, and AB 888, the Safe Homes Grant Program, which will be part of the Department of Insurance by Assemblymember Calderon, that is on the governor's desk, and AB 1 by Assemblymember Connolly, which would also establish certain home hardening requirements as well. That's also on the governor's desk. So a significant amount of legislation that's been specifically focused on fire prevention, significant budget investments, and I just want to lift up within that funding that we had allocated was the allocation of $135 million for wildfire prevention grants, which is part of that bigger commitment that the state had made. And these grants will help local projects and communities protect against wildfires, including hazardous fuel reduction and wildfire prevention planning and education. And in recent years, 2,200 landscape health and fire prevention projects were done, treating nearly 1.9 million acres, including 730,000 acres in 2023. This includes the North Orwinda Shaded Fuel Break Project, which helped clear wildfire fuels across the Berkeley Hills. And so with the significant increase in CAL FIRE resources, with the year-round seasonal fire crew, with the billions of dollars of budget investments that we're making through Prop 4 and through GGRF and other state funding sources, the general fund, and with the significant legislative portfolio that the legislature advanced, focusing on home hardening, focusing on how we can provide incentives and grant resources so we can support homeowners who are doing the hard work of home hardening and implementing Zone 0 requirements. I think that we'll be able to see a real impact in California in the coming years. So I'll stop there with regard to what the state has done this year. I just say that addressing fire safety and fire prevention remain some of my top priorities as your representative in the California State Senate, as they were when I was the mayor of Berkeley, and look forward to your ideas and how we can work together to not just make sure we get the resources to support the work that community groups and cities and counties are doing here in the East Bay, but I welcome your ideas as we're developing our legislative plan for next year. I mean, ideas around legislation, how we can further build on this work. So with that, I'm happy to take your questions and thank you for this opportunity.
So we'll do see if there's any questions while you're here. First, thank you. Thanks for your leadership on this, Senator. And also, I know you've always expressed openness if we have ideas, and that's something for us to think about.
Yes.
And also, as a coalition of governments, obviously writing letters of support, because it's then all the 8 jurisdictions. Hopefully that's helpful as well. So I know your staff lets us know, your wonderful district director, about when you may need letters of support on any of those bills. And then as we think of ideas. So let me just go around and see if there's any questions. Yes, Supervisor.
Thank you so much, Senator Arreguín, for your leadership. And I think we're really lucky to have you in this position with your familiarity around this issue. I'm just going to state the obvious. So many of our residents need resources to participate in home hardening and having defensible space. And so I know you know that, but just wanted to say that out loud. I do have a question in terms of whether you can share any additional information about where the Board of Forestry is around state guidance. That would be great to hear, unless Susan or someone else is going to share that.
I think Ms. Wengraf, who's been following the process very closely, can provide an update, but I know that they haven't finalized the regulations yet, to my understanding. They met yesterday, apparently. I think I joined many elected officials in the East Bay and sending a letter to, I think about last month, urging the adoption of strong Zone 0 regulations. And so I think that process is still ongoing.
Right. Council member.
Thank you, Senator, so much for being here and giving us this update. Is there, I know that the process for getting grant funding takes a little time. When do you think the current budget grants will be able to be applied for? And will they be mostly for governmental groups or for residents and individuals?
I will get back to you with that information. I believe that the different departments that are implementing these grant programs are in the process of trying to, start that process with respect to whether fire safe councils are eligible or fire departments or governmental agencies. We can do that research and get back to you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Want to say?
Yeah, we checked in on some of this and they discussed that it'd be between 6 to 8 weeks before that they could give us some of that information.
That seems very quick. Thank you. Hello, Senator. Good to see you. Sounds like the state is primarily focusing on providing resources, and that's great. I think that's probably the biggest bottleneck, so thank you. I was also wondering if there's a need for, and if you're looking at, or anyone in the legislature is looking at, more CEQA reform. Is CEQA still a barrier to this sort of mitigation efforts, or is that, I know the governor has paused some aspects of it. Is that something that's being discussed, or is it just, is it taken care of?
It is definitely being discussed. There were 2 pretty significant changes to CEQA that we adopted in June as part of the June budget, one relating to infill housing projects and the other around other types of advanced manufacturing projects, other types of sort of commercial projects. That's definitely something that we continue to discuss. I know that the work that UC Berkeley was planning on doing, for example, was the subject of CEQA litigation for many years. And so I think that definitely remains an issue that we continue to discuss as part of how we can streamline the process of getting these projects done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator, for coming out and giving this great presentation. While it was in the legislature's second day in action, it was my first night as the chair of the Contra Costa Mayor's Conference, and literally the next day, me and my soldiers were out in the field for the LA mission. So I want to just thank you and the entire legislature for pivoting and putting focus into making sure that California addresses our ever-growing fire need. With that, it's crazy how these fires kind of redefined California, where our priorities come pretty much every single time we learn something new. Camp Fire taught us something. The different complex fires we've had around here taught us something different. Now that we've kind of, I don't want to say shifted, but paid more attention to the urban interface with the grants that are coming down the line, do you see any sort of jurisdictions that might have challenges applying for them, say like a city like Hercules, right? We're a little bit more away from the more denser part of the East Bay, but we're still in that urban face corridor.
Could you just clarify, you're asking about the availability of grant opportunities?
Yeah, and who might have like a challenge at trying to be competitive around that?
I mean, I would encourage every community to apply. I do think the idea of this coalition, I think, is particularly important and impactful because I think it makes your communities more competitive for some of these competitive funds. And I think that was one of the ideas we had when we created this.
Right.
And also just the idea that wildfire risk doesn't honor geographic boundaries. It's an issue that is regional in nature. But I think your underlying point is that there needs to be equity in terms of how these budget investments are made. And as I mentioned, historically, a lot of funding has gone towards forests and wildland management and parks. Properties are owned by the state and rural areas, and not enough has gone towards cities, and not enough has gone to cities along the wildland urban interface. And then we see what happens, when these fires happen in urban contexts, how devastating they are, how quickly embers travel. And how quickly damage can happen. So I think that's part of the conversation we're having on how we can reorient and prioritize funding for communities that aren't necessarily rural or for forests, but to really focus on how are we ensuring that cities of all different sizes, and cities particularly in the WUI, how they're being prioritized for how these grant dollars are being spent. And that's something I will continue to advocate for.
And just to follow up on the senator's comment, I think that is indeed one of the reasons why we are here, because we can strengthen an application for Hercules Pinole. I know Hercules applied for a grant recently. I know that there was a support letter we wrote, and I think we are in a stronger position if we can do things sub-regionally. So I think that's an important point for all of us as we think about grant opportunities. Yeah, is to strengthen numbers.
Strengthen numbers. Yep. Thank you, Senator.
Yep.
Can I just clarify something that Councilmember O'Keefe had asked about? After the LA fires, the governor had suspended certain provisions of CEQA. And then I just did a quick Google search just to make sure. I think my recollection was correct that Senate Bill 131, which was the second CEQA trailer bill, did include an exemption from wildfire risk reduction projects, including prescribed fire, dispensable space clearing, and fuel breaks. So that actually was in one of the budget trailers that was adopted in June. I thought it was, but I wasn't 100% sure. And so we got that bill like 2-3 days before we had to vote on it. I'll just keep that in mind. And it was probably 200 or 300 pages. So. But yes, that was included in the CEQA streamlining actions the legislature did take. I think that's really important.
Councilmember Bonner.
Thank you, Senator. I'm glad you're the chair of Public Safety Commission, and we are in touch with your district rep, who is kindly going to hear our suggestions about new policy proposals. But now that we have you here, I just want to explain one thing. It's wonderful to have this body. for East Bay Hills. That's why community advocates work so hard to establish this. But there is a problem. If you come to my community, you see there are many houses in their front yards have junipers in their backyards. They have eucalyptus trees, especially HOAs. They cannot afford cutting them down. Grant applications, federal or state, are too much for individuals. They don't basically apply. We as fire safe councils don't have the capacity to apply for them. But we have zero overhead. We all work as volunteers. A small amount to fire safe councils and community organizations, even a couple of thousand, 100,000 per year, will go a long way. And as nonprofit organizations, our books are open. So I strongly urge you to please consider trickling down some of that budget to community organizations, fire safe councils, to make residents in rural areas. It could be a matching grant to households. It could be, the different things, but trust them that they're working hard, those community organizations and fire safe councils, and deserve the support. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. I'll just lift up, I believe in Berkeley, we had implemented a program, right? We provide some small amount of money for property owners who aren't able to afford the cost of doing fuel reduction work on their property. But I think the fire safe councils would be a good vehicle to do that through that kind of work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. We're going to now ask former council member Wengraf and our vice chair Ramachandran, who serve as like a ledge committee, to continue this presentation. So thank you. And thank you for being here. And thank you for your leadership, Senator, on all of this and so many other issues. Thank you.
I'm going to turn the mic over to Vice Chair Ramachandran in a minute. But I just want to say I can't really express the gratitude that I have to Senator Arreguín for his continued advocacy of wildfire mitigation issues. As long as I can remember, and I was on the Berkeley City Council for 16 years, he was always there as an incredibly strong partner in trying to address this issue. And I think we are so lucky to have him in Sacramento now. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, Senator Arreguín. And I look forward to working with you as we move forward, trying to address this problem, this big challenge. Thank you. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Vice Chair Ramachandran to introduce our little presentation on our trip to Sacramento.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just want to echo what Susan just said about Senator Arreguín's leadership. It was really great to meet with, the delegation of this coalition, which is primarily Senator Arreguín and Assemblymember Wicks. It was very clear that we have very strong champions for our regions in this side of Alameda County and Contra Costa County on wildfire related issues. And one of the things that we wanted to do on our trip to Sacramento a couple weeks ago was make sure that we're making our voice heard, not just as individual cities, but as a coalition with as many members as possible. So we had lobbyists from Townsend, Niccolo DeLuca, who many of you have interacted with through Work Through Cities or otherwise, suggest a certain number of bills to advocate for and meeting with a certain number of offices. So we met with the Assembly Insurance Committee staff, the Office of Assemblymember Bennett, Grayson, Quirk Silva, Connolly, as well as our own delegation, of course, Senator Arreguín and Buffy Wicks. And this was the first time that this was our first advocacy visit, first off. And it was the first time, many of these members from all different parts of California were able to hear about our coalition. There was a lot of excitement about the fact that we're 2 counties and 6 cities/jurisdictions working together on something like this. And, Ultimately, they know our goal is to advocate for funding. Policies and certain pieces of legislation was the focus of our immediate visit. But as as opportunities for funding come closer next year, we very much expressed our interest in wanting funding for, as we've talked about earlier, education efforts focused around Zone 0. So out of the bills that we advocated for, out of the 6 bills, 5 have moved forward. There are also other bills that Senator Arreguín just mentioned that are very supportive to our coalition as well. Just wanted to briefly highlight one that we're really happy that passed and actually are a little surprised. Hopefully it does get signed, and that's SB 616 that probably of all of them pertains most to this coalition's work, which is creating a community heart. Apologies, that's not the, I think that's not the one. It's basically one where there's a $3 million grant. Sorry, it's 888. Basically creating an opportunity for funding for individual grants that will go to homeowners to be able to implement home hardening mitigations effectively. It's only about $3 million, so we assume it's going to be some kind of pilot program implementation if it's signed. But that seems like a good sign that a lot of these bills passed. In addition to the other ones that Senator Arreguín mentioned, I think that given everything that's gone on this year with the LA fires, this is at the top of mind for a lot of our legislators, and our goal was to make the East Bay urban wildfire region's needs and unique concerns known to others. So with that, I will pass it off back to former Chair Weingraff to continue on about our visit.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The Vice Chair covered most of what I was going to say, but first I want to thank Nicolo DeLuca from Townsend because he really guided us through the day. He made all the appointments with all of the offices. He met us at the front door. He guided us to every office, stayed with us through every meeting. He gave us feedback about our presentations. He was actually quite amazed that Vice Chair Ramachandran and I had never done a presentation before together because we were kind of winging it, and it worked out really well. We were very well received. Everybody was very interested in the coalition and impressed that we had gotten this far and expressed interest in working with us in the future. We specifically emphasized the need for funding for education, for a public information campaign. Statewide, this is an unfunded mandate. Whatever they pass, it's going to be an unfunded mandate. And we stress the need for a public information campaign because there's tremendous confusion about what is required. And also for some kind of program that would provide subsidies to those people who want to comply voluntarily, but just don't have the means to do so. So those were the 2 things that we stressed. Everybody was very interested in hearing more and working together. We met with them just at the end of their legislative session. Everybody was very, very busy. And so they all encouraged us to come back in October with ideas and proposals. I want to stress that Senator Arreguín and Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks have both expressed great interest in partnering with us as we move forward on these ideas. And actually, Nicolo DeLuca also said that he would help out. He would help us. So I think that the trip was extremely successful. We introduced ourselves to 7 different legislative offices, and the response was very, very positive. And we need to continue to do this so that we become a player. What we really want is a seat at the table as this legislation is developed, and we want to try to guide it. So I think it was a great day. I got to know Vice Chair Ramachandran. We took the train up. The train was delayed, so we had almost 2 hours together. And it was a hectic day, but it was really well received. And I'm very glad that we did it. So
So we'll take questions. So
answer
first,
questions, yeah.
I think Councilmember Vice Chair has her hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, just a quick note. I wanted to add, one of the members that we met with was Senator Tim Grayson, and some of you in this room were at the East Bay Wildfire Corridor meeting that he had put together a couple of months back. And I just wanted to express something positive, and I think maybe that's the work of this coalition, being out there more, branding ourselves more. But back a few months ago when he held that meeting, which included a number of jurisdictions, including ours and the other side of the tunnel, of course, we had offered, do you want to join forces, share resources, kind of collaborate? And it was indirectly, I'll do my thing and you guys can do yours, but, we have the same goals. And this time, we sort of, me and Susan kind of cornered him when we saw him in the hallway after his meeting. And he was honestly very excited. He said, listen, let's work together. Let's not divide and conquer. Let's see how we can actually collaborate and join forces. And we thought that was a really positive, productive sign. So there may be a future conversation of maybe more members wanting to join. And I know that'll probably be a future agenda item. But I think that was a positive note on speaking on the work of this coalition.
And thank you both experienced elected officials, current and past. So thanks for having spending the time on this. So we really appreciate it. And I think it makes sense. And I know the chair, myself and vice chair will maybe get together and talk with you, Susan, and talk about some ideas on legislation that we've heard here and take one of our agenda items for the next meeting to discuss some items that we could relay to our state senator and assembly member. Great.
Yeah, I just want to mention that as a follow-up, we wrote letters of support for I think it's 6 bills that that Nicolo had identified. We wrote letters of support on coalition letterhead. Robert, I think
Which we developed a nice letterhead that lists all of our jurisdictions. So when the legislators get it, they know it's 8 jurisdictions. So that's
and
good.
I had made packets for everybody, with little labels and all of that stuff and some materials, which we presented to them when we met with them. And so those letters, I believe Robert has and can post on the website. Because they're official, they're in the record now.
Great.
Yeah.
So any questions, further questions? I'll start over on this side this time.
Just want to say thank you and thank you for the excellent report.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Yes. And then we'll take public comment.
I also just want to say thank you, but especially thank you to former Councilmember Wengraf, because you could have retired and didn't. And I'm just so appreciative that you're still using your talents and skills and knowledge.
Been doing this so long, she doesn't want to give up on wildfire, right?
Retirement is just choosing what you want to do.
Right.
So
you get to work on less issues then.
That's the way I look at it. I don't have to go to council meetings anymore.
Yeah. I don't know. I hear the mayor ran pretty good council meetings there.
He ran fabulous council meetings. He wasn't the problem.
Okay. So with that, public comment on the legislative report. 2 minutes per speaker. 2 minutes, yes. Jim, good to see you. Always forget, you live in East Richmond or Hasford Heights? You're up in that area.
Yeah, East Richmond.
Yeah, I mean, there is that Hasford Heights, East Richmond. I know you're up in that area, yeah.
We're all a happy
Yes,
family there.
Yes,
so.
yes.
Thank you very much. And I think I want to echo some of the comments, Jim Hanson, Richmond, also Conservation Chair for CNPS, but speaking as a Bowie household, I'm really glad to see that the emphasis is being put on what we've learned and really came home in the Palisades and Eaton fires, which is that, fire is a natural part of California, but that we need to make our homes and neighborhoods more ember resistant. And certainly Berkeley is taking great strides in that area. a lot of the funding, I looked at the governor's budget originally, was 99% for wildfire vegetation management. I believe 1%, and may have my numbers not exactly right, but getting the focus and the balance. I think this is what we're learning and evolving in terms of doing more, hopefully ecologically sound vegetation management, so we're not bringing in invasive weeds in the way we do it here. And also these very practical steps of, boy, how do I find metal gates? It was so hard. And when I look at maybe we're at the stage where in solar, where say Bayren has information, videos, lists of contractors to help us in having kind of centralized areas, because this can be confusing. And so I just wanted to thank you and putting the focus, I think, where it belongs. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Any other public comment? All right, we're going to move back to item 5. Thank you again, all of you, for being here on the legislative report. Thank you, Senator. Item 5 is a discussion strategies to restrict parking on red flag days in high-risk residential areas. And we wanted I know there's different jurisdictions doing different things, and we're dealing with this somewhat in West Contra Costa. And I'll just sort of frame that this is, I think, an example of where a group like ours is valuable, because it involves effort of several agencies, right? It involves a fire agency, it involves public works, it involves fire police. So give you an example, in Kensington, which now has, of course, a consolidated police and fire district, but did not prior to June, there were 3 agencies that would be involved in dealing with this issue. Fire, which sort of makes recommendations on, where we should restrict parking on red flag days for purposes of evacuation, for example. It involves county public works to actually pass the resolution to create the zone, so no parking. And it involved, at the time, the police district in Kensington to enforce it. So you had fire district, police district, county. Obviously, it's different depending on, in a city, you may have one agency. But it's a perfect example of where we wear many hats here, right? Overseeing fire, police, public works, multidisciplinary. It involves all of those entities to really properly implement a no parking situation. So now, who was the presentation? I was going to introduce this topic, and I wasn't sure whether Chief Bachman or Robert, who do we say was doing from fire, going to talk about that. And we do have our traffic engineer here from Public Works. So was there an order that we had on this?
No, I don't believe so. Chief Bachman could speak on this.
So I know the El Cerrito Kensington chief's been looking at this issue, and this is sort of just meant to be general. But Chief Bachman, I'll start with you, and if you want to add anything, and I know we have our traffic engineer here. El Cerrito's been looking at this as well. I understand Arinda's done something. Part of it, I will just frame. There is this challenge in communities where people do not want to give up their parking. So, but yet the whole community benefits. And I like, as a Star Trek fan, I will quote something that Spock often said on Star Trek: the good of the many outweighs the good of the one. So I'll just sort of, a little, the idea the good of the community may outweigh the good of a few people on a street, of that in some cases, restricting parking in some of these windy, narrow streets in order to allow fire vehicles or evacuations to occur is a benefit to the community, but is often resisted by people on a street who lose their parking. So, and we've been exploring this, I know, up in Kensington. And I remember talking to one resident who said, well, why don't we maybe try it out on a voluntary basis? And the problem with that, it just takes one vehicle to violate that voluntary agreement, and then you can't evacuate if it's a narrow street. So I'm a believer in mandatory action. That voluntary doesn't always work, especially when the public safety of a community is at stake. So, Chief.
Sure. So this is a topic that we've been discussing throughout the county with all of our fire marshals. Because we're currently updating the fire code ordinance. So any additional requirements that would go into the fire code, we've listed that since the fire code is ratified and then adopted both by the county and every city, that if we were to include language in our fire code ordinance, this would be the best place that we would adopt it, and then we would revisit it every 3 years. So what we've come up with, and it's we'll say just finishing draft form because we've also had legal is reviewing it, is in Appendix D where you have fire lanes and fire sign enforcement. We've identified that currently signage for Appendix D in 103.6 says where required by the fire code official, fire apparatus access road shall be marked with no parking fire lane. This exists today in what we would call fire lanes. We have some additional requirements with that are listed that exist today. And the one is roadways of 20 feet wide fire lanes shall be posted on both sides of the road. 28 feet wide fire lanes shall be posted on one side of the road if determined by the fire official. The one that we're looking at adding, or I should say the 2 lines, is emergency evacuation routes. Fire lanes shall be posted as designated by the fire code official, regardless of road width. So it's identifying that it would be up to the fire official to decide where are these fire lanes or emergency evacuation routes necessary, and then requiring the signage. Then under enforcement, identifying fire lane restrictions established under this section shall be enforceable by both the fire code official and local law enforcement. Local law enforcement agencies are authorized to issue citations, order the removal of vehicles, and take otherwise enforcement actions necessary to maintain fire apparatus access roads clear of obstruction. Vehicles parked in violation of this section may be cited and towed at the owner's expense.
This is great. So this is in the fire code, so would presumably apply to every jurisdiction that is in the fire district, right?
Correct, because each
right.
city then must ratify and adopt our ordinance.
Right.
Along with, so this is the language that we've kind of worked through in Contra Costa County that the fire marshals have all had input on, and said it still isn't saying that you're going to do it. You could still put exceptions on there to say only in red flag days. It would be up to each jurisdiction and each fire official then to determine where are they needed and what limitations. But we want to make sure that we're identifying that the enforcement would come from local law enforcement, and that when that adoption occurs at every city level and at the county level, adopting the fire code, which would go in effect January 1, that they support this request as well, that they're going to be a partner in the enforcement of this if we were to go this route. So it's a tool that we're looking at to say it would give us that authority. And we think it would be best served in the fire code if we're going to add those additional potential additional requirements in certain areas.
So it gives the flexibility for the fire official to make recommendations that even if it gets away from defined street widths, which I think is really good. It deals with particular situations depending on the geography, the terrain, right? The proximity to the the urban interface, all of that. So it gives flexibility, and then fire makes a recommendation, and it ultimately these resolutions are passed by a city council or the board of supervisors, right? And then so you've got fire, public works, and law enforcement again. So fire making a recommendation, public works and the governing body of the jurisdictions basically approving it, and then enforced by law enforcement.
Yeah, because it's been questioned of if we were to identify these evacuation routes, essentially like where are we getting our authority to identify that an evacuation route should be posted and should be enforced. And so we feel it needs to be under the fire code. Probably the best section is under fire lane, but we call out that it's specific to an evacuation route.
And so this would be a good practice for all the fire agencies, whether they're city or district, to look at incorporating in their fire code, right? And so that's partially why we want to elevate this. Chief Sailors, I know you're dealing with this in El Cerrito too, El Cerrito and Kensington. Since you're chief for both jurisdictions.
Yes, thank you. We started this project a few years ago and had good success in the city of El Cerrito. Most of it was more of the soft skills of managing fears of the residents that live there. It was easy to identify the streets and know that we needed to have some sort of easy access into those neighborhoods. But educating the people that live there, the why we were doing it was probably the biggest challenge and our biggest success. So helping them understand that red flag day isn't every day.
Right.
They're thinking about they're losing parking permanently. And when you look at the city of El Cerrito, it gets about 4 red flag days a year. And also understanding what zone they're in, because the red flag days notifications usually come out for the whole area that we're in related to the Cal Fire area that we're in. So there may be a red flag day in Moraga Orinda, but not one in El Cerrito. And that helped us, the residents, understand, oh, these are the red flag days related to exactly where I live, which is a very low number of days.
Right.
And an amazing partnership with our residents and Make El Cerrito Fire Safe. We actually did a survey of all the residents on the streets so that we could get data back on, figure out what they knew about this, how they understood red flag parking, and what the impacts would be if we didn't implement this. That way we knew which tough spots we had and who was willing to adopt this. We've ran the pilot program for a few years now. We're actually expanding it this year, and we'll be adopting it into ordinance next year so that we can enforce it with PD. Now, that's the easy success story in El Cerrito because that's a charter city that, like you said, has one entity to work with, right? I can sit down next to the police chief and we can work out how we make this happen. Kensington, similar problem space, but different players.
Yeah,
Right?
it was just that the Board of Supervisors and Public Works would approve it,
Yep.
and then Kensington, and sort of like Hercules, which has the county fire district, but the city council, Public Works, police would enforce it. Fire district can recommend it. In Richmond, you get to do it all by yourself because you control everything. So I guess same with Berkeley. So yeah, Oakland, there's different players involved.
It is. And I think the biggest thing to try and avoid is the backfire effect from your residents that may not understand why they're doing it and what the actual impact will be on them, because then it can
Right.
sink you.
I do think, and we're going to turn to our county traffic engineer in a second, the recommendation, those of us who've been around in politics understand, and a fire chief's recommendation means a lot more than a public works director's recommendation. Just saying, not to downgrade public works, but when it comes from fire, it has just a higher value that this is really about safety. Saying that, we have a good traffic engineer on. Monish, are you on? He was going to be on. I think he was on. Or elevate him. Should we elevate him, Robert?
Hello,
Monish, you should be able to speak.
I'm speaking. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Contra Costa County's traffic engineer. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Monish Sen. I'm the traffic engineer for Contra Costa County. And as Supervisor Joya just described, this has actually been we've been working on this a little bit with a lot of different players over the last several months. And yeah, we are definitely interested in what I understand is a pilot project that El Cerrito has already, it sounds like maybe it hasn't deployed yet, but is about to. Yeah, our role is very simple. As directed by the fire folks and the emergency folks, we could enact this with the supervisor's support and at the Board of Supervisors. I
For
think
for the unincorporated areas.
for the
right,
unincorporated
right,
areas, which would be
right.
Kensington, East Richmond Heights, those kind of areas.
El Sobrante, right.
Yeah, but the other part of it, I think biggest maybe challenge would be, so us going to the board and then putting in static signs is not the hard part. It's the enforcement part on red flag warning days, because the residents are not going to know what days they can't park. So I think it would we would lean on some other entity to put up the barricades on that roadway saying this is a red flag warning day. And I'm thinking that would be KPD maybe, or some other entity.
Basically, you're saying local law enforcement, depending on the jurisdiction, could be responsible for putting the signs up.
And actually,
Or
we're
there'd be a lot,
very,
there'd be a lot
very
of
lucky
community
in
education.
Kensington. We actually
Right.
have a police force directed just for
Right.
Kensington. Whereas
Yeah.
say in East Richmond Heights, it'd probably be the sheriff we'd be leaning on, so.
Correct, correct. So the idea is that there would be a notice that you do a lot of community education, that no parking on red flag days, and then maybe you would have a sign. There are areas around where it says red flag day. So there'd be no, you don't even need a barricade all the time. I mean, if people are abiding by it, there's a sign that says today's a red flag day, sort of like what you see when you walk into trailheads at some of the parks, right? It'll say this is a red flag day or something like that, right? Yeah. And so, Monish, anything more you want to add? I just wanted to sort of highlight that there's 3 entities here: fire, public works, and police.
Yeah, and just the flipping of the sign part of it. And again, I think the fire folks will know more. There was discussion of like a sign that would literally, we could flip over, somebody would flip over the days of red flag warning.
Right.
I think
right.
the more effective thing is to put up barricades those days. So anyway, I'll leave it
Great.
at that. Thank you.
Good. So we wanted to say this is sort of one of these best practices that we could, maybe take the sort of what Contra Costa and other jurisdictions may have in the fire code and sort of look at that language across our jurisdictions. And maybe if Chief Bachman, you could share that language with us. And that's not to say that other jurisdictions may not be doing this or considering this, but having this language which gives more flexibility for the fire officials to make this recommendation regardless of the street width. I think that's what's important here, that concept. And then case by case, looking at each jurisdiction, but having that language, I think, across all of our jurisdictions, because it helps all of us. I know I will start on this end because Councilmember Bonner focuses a lot on evacuation routes.
Thank you. Actually, in our area, we do receive requests for no parking on red flag day signs. There are many concerns. I have several questions for you, Chief Bachman, and congratulations to El Cerrito for having implemented it, even on a pilot basis and hopefully permanently soon. Before I start my questions, is there a public outreach for this fire code for us to see it and comment and make sure, it's amenable to the public?
Yes, in order for us to adopt the fire code, we have to have 2 readings of it. And then we also have to provide, we'll provide our fire board a staff report that identifies any changes in the ordinance that we're recommending, along with when we go around to our cities for the local adoption of the fire code, their staff will also receive an update of any changes that are being made or recommended in this and answer any questions. The reason we're wanting to take this, we'll say step 1, is we want to make sure it's very, very clearly defined that we would have the authority to identify evacuation routes and implement signage. There's some interpretation of, well, we probably would have that authority now if we wanted to call it a fire lane, but a lot of your fire lanes in the fire code are restricted to road width. And what we would rather have is the ability, whether it's through an evacuation study, whether it's resident driven, that if that request and that outreach then occurs, that we go to an area to identify that we want to identify no parking on one side of the road, on both sides of the road, only on red flag days, whatever the parameters are, that we would have that ability in ordinance that has been adopted by city and county for enforcement.
Thank you. And I commend your leadership in taking control and pushing it forward. That's awesome. So when should we expect to have a reading of it? So
This is at the county level. You would have to do your own for the city of Richmond. You're a council member in Richmond. So.
Right, but we
for-
are, we are also West Contra Costa Fire.
Yeah, fire-
District.
yeah,
We need
right.
to share it with the public, just curious, and then I have my questions.
So when are we going to share it? We'll say we're in like the final step of draft approval
Okay.
because there's, the other ordinance that essentially there's 3 ordinances we have to update this year because of changes coming at the state level. Every 3 years, the fire code gets updated. So the fire code is getting updated January 1, 2026. If we don't update our ordinance, then as a default, the only thing that we can enforce is the updated ordinance or the updated fire code at the state level. So we make those, we have to update our ordinance. And if any code section changes, we make that change. So there's a fire code ordinance update, which if we identify any changes other than a technical change of a code reference number, maybe that changed, we have to include that in a facts and findings and in a report saying, here's the changes that we're proposing for this year's fire code.
What we could do, at least, because I want to make sure our discussion is broad for all of us, but for the El Sobrante area that you're talking about, we can have this on an agenda, the El Sobrante Municipal Advisory Council, which is the appointed body for the unincorporated area, and West Contra Costa Fire Safe Council. So between the Fire Safe Council and the MAC, I think that that's 2 good public avenues to ensure the public is informed. I will say that as the supervisor for that area, I think, and as a fire district board member, is that I think having our El Sobrante MAC and the West Contra Costa Fire Safe Council maybe get that, and then there could be any input from that.
Thank you. I just wanted to rough estimate. It's
Right,
because
and for every city here, cities will do their own thing, and go through their own processes. You're sort of ahead of the curve. You're doing this for the unincorporated areas and the cities, and there's many cities in Contra Costa that are covered by our fire district. And so it'll include those, you're going to those cities, but for our area, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
And you'll have 2 readings. So what we're shooting for is first reading of the ordinance and explanation with that staff report will occur in October. The second reading would occur in November. The reason you should ideally do it, have your second reading done in November, is because there's also that 30-day implementation pause. So if you wait till December for your second reading, you're technically going to go however many days into January without a active fire code ordinance.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So just to make sure I understand, you're going to identify evacuation routes?
No. What he's doing is amending.
Bit.
No. Let me state.
Okay.
He's amending the fire code to give. So I do not want today's discussion to be about where evacuation routes should be. That's not what this, okay. Right. It's to extend the authority of the fire official to have the flexibility to recommend where there would be no parking on red flag days with the idea that those may be evacuation routes. So leaving for the future, identifying no parking on certain roadways that would be evacuation routes on red flag days.
Right, that's what I was trying to say. So you are
Not
identifying fire lanes.
Right. No.
No, it's under the fire lane section, but it's specifically called out as an evacuation route to give us the authority to identify evacuation routes, not where they are, but to give us that authority to say, we have the authority to identify fire lanes. By adding that additional line under the fire lane section, it's saying we also then have the authority to identify evacuation routes.
In the future.
Yeah, we're not going to identify them. Just like when you say you have the authority to identify a fire lane, you don't list every fire lane that you're providing.
Exactly.
It's saying we have the authority to go business by business and identify fire lanes. This would give us the authority to go city by city, street by street, unincorporated by unincorporated area, and identify, is there a necessity to identify an evacuation route, whether it's resident driven, evacuation study driven. It gives us that authority to then enforce it, even if it's a year or 2 from now before they're posted and decided where they should be.
Okay. One question has come up about private roads. Would this apply to them like there are 10 houses on a private road?
Monish, you're on. I know we have had issues about private roads. So from fire standpoint, can you require no parking on a private road from using the fire district authority? County can't. The county is unable, I've dealt with this issue, to put restrictions on private streets through public works, correct, Monish? So
Yes, can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's correct. We have no authority to place any regulatory or otherwise signs on a private road.
So the question is whether a fire district or fire agency for a city has the authority to restrict parking on private streets under the fire code.
I don't believe so, because I'm going back to even in our ordinance where we talk about vegetation clearance requirements, that does stop on a private road. How we've addressed those is we go to those private roads, we meet with the landowners and say, what would be acceptable to you? Our ordinance says we are going to go up to 10 feet. Are you in agreement with allowing us to remove 10 feet of vegetation? And if not, what are you comfortable in having us remove? If they're not supportive of that, then we stop right at where the public road ends on our evacuation rock cleanup. So it would probably be the same.
Thank you. And this applies only to very high fire hazard severity zone?
No, it applies anywhere we may determine it's necessary. So in other words, all this is doing is giving the fire department flexibility in the future to say, no parking on this road. We will leave it to the future to identify where those are. And it's likely they'll be in the very high fire zone, severity zone, but maybe there's going to be a need to do it somewhere else. So it's just giving the flexibility to the fire official to determine that in the future.
Okay, very good. I have to say I'm a bit confused, but I'll wait for the text.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, the idea is it's probably going to be in these high fire zones, but who knows? Maybe if there's a gap somewhere and there's a need,
Like
right?
enrichment.
Right. There may be a need. Yeah. So that's something you can deal with in Richmond as a council member, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
questions. Thanks. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes. And in Berkeley, it's easy. You get city council gets to do it all with your fire department, public works, and police.
It's easy.
It's your
No
one-stop
problem.
shop.
Yeah.
Nothing's easy in Berkeley.
No. I have first I want to make a comment, a little bit of a rant actually, and then something else. I have a big problem with unpredictable parking restrictions. I think we really need to think about that. It's one thing just, people who are there every day going to work. Oh, it's a red flag day. I got to move my car. But, people are on vacation. It's not fair to have people live under this unpredictability. At the same time, I understand that broader parking restrictions have a much bigger impact, and I can see why we'd
I
want to
ask you a
limit it.
question too, because and I want to hear your thoughts about this. One of the things I know that I heard discussed as an alternative to no parking on red flag days was a no parking during a fire season, meaning whatever the date is, May 1 to October 1. What's your thought about that?
That's like the main thing I've been pushing. So yes,
Okay.
I think that's a good idea. But I found that I haven't been experiencing broad support for that. So, that's what I would do if I was queen for a day. But if that doesn't seem politically possible, what I would suggest is look at the mechanism of enforcement. There's citation and there's towing. Citation is kind of stupid if you think about it, because if the car is a safety concern, the citation doesn't make you safer. So you kind of have to tow them. And towing is really draconian. I mean, cars can be totaled by towing if their value is less than the cost to get them out. So one thing I was thinking is maybe we could tow automatically, but then not charge or charge a very minimal fee or something like that. Like if there's a way to sort of find a sweet spot of effective enforcement without really putting this huge burden on people who didn't necessarily do anything that bad. So just a thought that I had to share. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and then come back to, I have another thing.
No, no, go ahead. Those are all really good points. I mean, I was the same issue of I mean, I think when we first were talking about this for Kensington, there was this discussion of whether it would be during the fire season. And I think there was more public opposition to that because there'd no parking for a large part of the year. Whereas if it was no parking on the red flag days, there was a little more public support because they would not lose their parking as often. Yeah, this is tough, but you're right. I think that the predictability is an issue. What about the enforcement? And by the way, this fire code can be drafted in a way that gives the option for it to be a defined period or a red flag day. In other words, can the fire code be flexible enough to have that flexibility in the future, not knowing what we're going to do?
Yeah, we didn't call out either way. We didn't want to identify only on red flag days. We didn't want to identify a season. It just says the ability is there for the fire code official to evaluate it and implement it if they feel it's necessary.
Good. So it leaves flexibility and we can decide that issue later. And it doesn't deal with the enforcement side. That also can be addressed later. Your suggestions about how you deal with enforcement.
Thanks. And I have another
Yes, go ahead.
unrelated. I would actually like to invite Assistant Chief Arnold, or is it Chief, to come up. He's I'll let him speak about it, but Berkeley has recently finished our evacuation study. And so these issues are being actively discussed, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to, is that okay, Chair?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember. Thanks, Chair. Chief, if I can get that Appendix D language, that would be really helpful because coordinating between agencies, I think, is really important. So looking at that and whether we can use that as well would be helpful. A couple of things that have come out of Berkeley with our evacuation time study, just for consideration, and I can only speak to Berkeley and its streets and its challenges. I know there's parts of each one of our communities that look like parts of Berkeley's infrastructure, but maybe not throughout. So a couple of things that came out of the time study for your consideration. One is that they determined that there is no way to adequately evacuate the hills in the amount of time that would allow for us to start that evacuation after a wildfire starts under extreme conditions. That was echoed by Eaton, Paradise, Palisades. Everybody sort of has dealt with the same challenge, which is that the number of people that need to evacuate when winds are moving 50 to 80 miles an hour is higher than the number of people that can be supported by the roadway infrastructure. So we have been telling folks now for a couple of years that on particularly dangerous days where the weather conditions are not just red flag, but are extreme, we can't guarantee your safety if you wait until after a wildfire starts, depending on the distance of that wildfire from our jurisdiction. And I think that's a really important message to continue to get out there, is that we don't have a solution for that. The second thing is that one of the things that we got out of our evacuation time study is that for most of Berkeley's streets, which are small residential streets, we don't have large multi-lane roadways getting people out of the WUI, or increasing the roadway width by decreasing parking or increasing parking restrictions doesn't reasonably increase or decrease the amount of time that it takes to get out of the hills. You're still bottlenecked at intersections. And for 2-lane roads, 1 lane in each direction, during an emergency, everybody is flowing in the same direction. So removing parking doesn't give you an additional lane of travel for most of our streets. And so eliminating parking will not decrease the amount of time that it takes for someone to leave the hills. But what we are discovering is that there is areas where we can protect ingress. So making sure that we have 2 lanes available so that emergency responders can get in on the streets that we depend on to gain access to the hill. So a part of this red curbing, or for us, the majority of this red curbing is not about increasing capacity to get out. We haven't found a way to do that, but it is about maintaining capacity to get in. So just food for thought in your discussion.
Meaning for the fire vehicle to get in.
Fire,
Yes.
Police, emergency access,
Right.
buses that we need in to get people out of schools. Making sure that we have ingress capacity is where red curbing is going to be much more effective for us than decreasing the amount of time it's going to take someone to get out based on our roadway network, which is
Right.
difficult.
Yeah, I know. This shows how complicated of an issue this is. I know in the discussions we've had in Kensington, it was more really surgically targeted to some really narrow, small cul-de-sac kind of streets and things like that, where no parking would literally create much more space to get out, right? Knowing that the bottlenecks could be down the hill, exactly as you say. I mean, I think there's this view that evacuation routes are standard, they're easy to determine. What the evacuation route is going to be determined on the day. What's the wind speed? What else is happening? Was there an accident somewhere else? I realize that the Emergency Operations Center makes a judgment on that day of what's the evacuation routes, right? Yeah. Anything else you wanted to add?
Nope, just wanted to share that. Thank you.
You want to say anything else before I move down here?
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, we'll go down here and then we'll go back to you. Okay, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about sort of a standard notification. Does the community warning system have alerts for the red flag days? I mean, it seems really difficult to have like the one sign in town that says high fire danger. And then, you're supposed to drive by it, or how do you know? So is there an easy way to let people know that's sort of countywide that people can rely on?
Right.
And will be used to so they can make
I
a
think
good
there's
decision.
a lot of study being done now about how to improve the community warning system, which is, that based on, calling your phone or cell phone. And I mean, and ultimately some of these areas where there's a red flag day are very, where to have no parking are really targeted. So I think that's a good question to take up to look at, how to get that message out to people. And I know Berkeley, getting to the chief's comments, Berkeley has, unlike maybe some other jurisdictions, has required or recommended evacuations even prior to any fire event, right? I know, because I would get comments from Kensington residents like, hey, how come folks a few blocks away in Berkeley are being told to evacuate on this red flag day, but we are not? I've gotten that. And because you've been proactive in just telling people, if you can, don't be in certain areas on this red flag day. I don't know if any other jurisdiction does that, but that's a judgment that you've made, that, right? So it shows the differences that happen among jurisdictions here, and it causes confusion. I'm not saying anything's wrong here, just there's confusion because people hear what's happening a few blocks away and then say, why aren't I doing it, right? People in your district are evacuating, and then in my district they're not, and they're saying, what should I do? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding is the reason that we give that warning is because, as Chief Arnold mentioned, our evacuation study told us that we literally cannot evacuate everybody under certain
Probably
conditions.
true in other areas too, especially El Cerrito, Kensington.
It is. And
right.
We've been having that discussion as a partner between El Cerrito and Berkeley for quite a few years now. And the concept of suggesting that you leave early is important, because practically we know that street capacities can't carry that. The challenge is we cannot issue an evacuation warning or an evacuation order without an incident. And that's actually a law enforcement function to order evacuation.
Make recommendations.
Yes, but the idea of doing a leave early when you have certain weather events and dicing them up between the difference between a red flag day and an extreme red flag day, which is typically called a particularly dangerous situation. Well, that makes a big difference. And we are actively meeting on that almost on a weekly basis right now to try and figure out what type of guidelines we're going to use as a partner between the two communities. Because if you do evacuate, or if you do start to move people out of Kensington without Berkeley knowing, well, you're going to impact their streets, because we share those streets together. So there is no one entity acting alone. We have to be in partnership.
Yes.
Thank you. And to kind of follow up with this, I know that this focus is wildfire, but we don't know when an earthquake is coming. I know that like Berkeley had the tsunami warning, and people did call and say, why them and not us? But in terms of like this whole ability to evacuate, is it enough to have this in the ordinance to address this?
And this ordinance is dealing with just wildfire issues? Is that this is focused on making a recommendation on wildfire issues, or no parking?
Or just evacuation in general?
Well, if you're asking about the red flag parking, that would just be one piece of the puzzle that would help us with
Right.
with ingress, moving in, so that we don't hit a bottleneck when we're trying to go up the hill. Because if we are responding to a small fire on Red Flag Day, possibly we can keep it to a small fire. But if we get stuck, blocked behind a bunch of cars from that small fire, will turn into a large fire. That is just one piece of the puzzle. But the evaluation of evacuating during a major event really depends on the winds. And that's the determining factor of how effective and how much time we have to get out of the area. And the winds will probably be our trigger point of when we start to make decisions of leave early and what type of actions we take.
Right. And you may not want some areas evacuating because you want to leave room for other people to evacuate who need to. You can't tell people, everyone in a zone ahead of time to evacuate, right? Because you may want people to stay to free up the roads downstream for other communities to evacuate.
Yeah, that's correct. Effectively, it's a math problem with carrying capacity on the streets. And you want to make it coordinated so that you get people out on the streets that can actually get out when they need to.
I want to be clear that today's item, while evacuation is a really large, complicated topic that probably involves other people here,
It is, yeah.
including law enforcement. Today, it's about this more focused area of giving the fire officials the power to designate certain roadways for no parking to address wildfire issues. And that's this common thing that maybe we could do across our jurisdictions, and giving the fire officials this authority. That's our topic here, right? It's related to all this other stuff, but that's the issue before us here.
And I think you have a few good models out there. There's a few cities in the state of California that have had red flag parking restrictions and have addressed a lot of the questions about what happens on vacation, what happens with service trucks coming in to do lawn maintenance or install refrigerators. And the city of Pasadena not only has all those questions answered, maybe not the direct way we want, but they have a good model for us. They also have a notification process they use. They call it please, but it's effectively a NIXL alert that goes out to tell everybody we're in a red flag day. Parking restrictions are in place, and they do have quite a few of their streets that have parking restrictions. So they have addressed the vacation issue and what happens with vehicles. And I don't know if many of us would support, towing the one vehicle left on the street if we can still get around it. Because that might have, massive consequences for the person that's on vacation. But the notification process and the ideas of how to do that have already been mapped out for us.
All of the jurisdictions here on their own are going to address how to implement this, when to do it, how to do it, but this is
and how to enforce it.
Exactly, right. Did you want anything else, Chief?
Yeah, no, it's just clarifying. This is step one.
Yeah, right. That's all we're talking
about. We've heard it over and over that we want the fire districts to look at this. We want this to be evaluated. My concern is having 13 cities in the unincorporated area. That means that if we do an ordinance, that's 14 different government bodies we got to go back in front of. We're doing it anyway with the fire code. It belongs in the fire code. We'll explain it in a staff report and definitely take public comment and outreach as we update our fire codes to saying this is just step one of many steps to potentially get us to where we need to be.
Thank you. Supervisor, did you have anything? I know you cover a large area too, and you're on the fire board in Alameda County as well, right? Is that your, the supervisors serve on your fire district board like they do in Contra Costa?
I personally am not on the fire board.
Yeah.
I certainly appreciate this conversation. I see Alameda Fire Chief McDonald is in the audience. Maybe I appreciate the focused nature of this conversation, and I am curious about, especially as we do community engagement on this, and as we do some of the work on Zone Zero, how we can just be really holistic in sharing with our constituents the different things that we can do. When I met with one of our fire chiefs in the area I represent, they said, after home hardening, the next best thing is leave early. So thank you for mentioning that. So I am wondering, I know these issues are incredibly complex, but I wonder if there is a way for us to think about, in addition to Zone Zero and home hardening, the range of things that we can do to make sure people are safe, leave early, this conversation about restricted parking on red flag days, making sure people are aware of evacuation routes, the notification, and then with schools being in my district, thinking about the analogy to snow days for some of us who might have lived outside of this wonderful climate. and having buses ready to take kids when the weather is potentially very dangerous. So that's probably more to get into
Yeah,
today, but I
right.
am wondering how to really look at this holistically.
Yeah, no, that's a
because,
good point. Yeah.
leaving early, I think, is something maybe we could agendize for a future meeting.
Right. You were, yes.
I don't want to take up too much time, but we did address that in Kensington and El Cerrito. We have one particular school in Kensington. I've had a few meetings with the school board, and we're making an addition to their emergency operations plan in their annex for fire days, like snow days. They already have 2 days built into the school year as a buffer. And they understand that with that particular school, there's no practical way to get 500 kids out of that area. And we're looking for particular trigger points where we do those fire days. We don't need a fire. What we need is weather that is so severe that we know that if a fire starts, we won't be able to practically control it before it gets to the school. And that's where we're using those particular dangerous situations or extreme red flag days as a trigger point to basically close that school on those few days. And the Hilltop School in Kensington is a unique situation. However, those conversations are already happening, and the school district and the emergency manager for the school district is understanding the problems that we face. Because you did lose 5 public schools in the Eaton fire. It was just fortunate that the fire started after school was out.
Yeah. I think you raised, however, a really good point. We can talk about this for some future agenda items. What's sort of the toolkit of available kinds of measures? We're going to talk about home hardening on the next item, that because it's all of these. There's no one magic answer to all of this. Yeah. So Hala, did you had a comment further, and then we'll.
Very quick question. I heard the city of Berkeley has negotiated with the hotels and motels nearby to encourage a pre-evacuation. Is that true?
I think so.
That's awesome. But maybe other cities could adopt that. Thank you.
A few hotels in Richmond, you could do that, right? All right. Any public comment on this item? Yes, 2 minutes per speaker.
Hi, I'm Gary Prost with the El Cerrito Fire Safe Council. We've been advocating for red flag parking restrictions since 2019, and kudos to Chief Sailors for implementing the pilot program. This is being done in other places. It's nothing new. Los Angeles, Pasadena, even Orinda are doing this already. So I'm in support of doing this for the East Bay Hills. As far as space is concerned, you don't have to park on the street. You have a garage, you have a driveway, you even have a lawn. There are options. You can park further down the street where it's not being restricted. As far as informing people, there's the evening news. There's the emergency warning system for the community. You can post signs on the main roads, on Moser, on Arlington, on Potrero. The signs that we have for our pilot program have a QR code. You can hit it with your phone. It'll tell you if it's a red flag day. You can put that on the street sign. My in-laws lived in the Griffith Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. When I went to visit and it was a red flag day, they were adamant, get your car off the street, put it in the driveway, because it will be towed. They were ruthless about towing cars on red flag days. Just make sure everybody knows when it's a red flag day and do it.
Thank you. When we were doing our walkthrough up in Kensington for this one particular street that would have no parking on red flag days, we noticed lots of empty driveways that cars could be parked in. Right. Susan.
Yeah, thank you. This is the idea of giving the fire department the power to do this is not controversial as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
What's controversial is the implementation.
Mm-hmm.
People are very proprietary about parking in front of their homes. In Berkeley, we did a pilot when now Police Chief Brannigan, who's now at Piedmont, was the Berkeley Police Chief. We did a pilot. We chose one street in 3 different council districts to use as an experiment. and you're elected officials, so, and I'm very sympathetic, having been through it. The outrage and anger that we were met with resulted in only one tiny little street in my district being red curbed. Nobody else, none of the other projects went through. It was just too controversial. I feel like, especially if you have a community of aging constituents, people with disabilities, people with pets, and people with young children, preemptive evacuation is the safest thing to do. And all of our jurisdictions should be enforcing, it's voluntary, right? We don't have the right to tell them to do it, but encouraging them to think about where will we go, when will we go, is really, I think, in the public's best interest. Thank you.
Shows you how challenging this is. Thank you. Any other public comment? So again, what we're seeing, and Chief Bachman, if you can provide us and that language, we'll get it out to everybody through Robert. So we all have that fire code language, and then we'll arrange something for the El Sobrani MAC for October on that, just to include, and then others can do with it as they wish. Thanks. All right, item 7 is direction on developing a public information education campaign on Zone 0. I'm going to say a few words and turn over to John Kaufman, because I think what I'm going to recommend is maybe slightly different than what we were thinking about, which is to go forward with this, but to sort of meet with our county coordinators in Alameda and Contra Costa to look at not recreating the wheel, but maybe how we're doing this all together, because there are lots of resources in these two agencies. So John, go ahead.
Yes, it's no surprise to anyone, and it was broadcast worldwide during the LA fires. The biggest source of fuel in wildfires in urban areas are our homes and the green space immediately around them. That makes Zone 0, defensible space, home hardening, that complex of projects key. And there's no doubt about that. Anyone who knows anyone who lives in the Los Angeles area knows that firsthand. So what do? This organization is in an ideal position to help to move forward on that complex of issues. Why? Because to harden homes, to create Zone 0, to create defensible space is not something a fire department or a police department or any public official can accomplish. It's up to each individual homeowner to take care of their property. How do we make that happen? We need public education. We need public information. We need to get the word out to people that this is what you need to do if you want to continue to live safely in your home. So what I am going to suggest is that we work together with Michelle and in Alameda County with Chief Pinto to put together a public information campaign. And I'm suggesting that this organization take $50,000, up to $50,000 that we have. We have $20,000 on hand. We are raising in dues another $100,000. I'm suggesting that we use up to $50,000 of those funds to put together a proposal to research what kind of public information campaign we should wage, to research where the funding is. Jesse Aragon talked about all the different bills that have been passed or are ready to be signed by the governor. And we need to figure out what the strategy is, but we need some expert help to put that together. I'm suggesting that you, as the board, authorize this expenditure of up to $50,000 to work with the two county coordinators and put together that program and get it funded so that we can do the public education program that we need to do to make Zone Zero home hardening defensible space go forward. If we're going to be safe from wildfire, that's what we need to accomplish. And I'm happy to discuss
you.
further.
And I will just add that I think, and I'm actually even putting up our website, that we actually talked about this last year at one of our meetings. Susan, remember when you were here in chair? Trying to pull it up here. It's actually probably on our website that this was one of the main things we wanted to do is establish, working with others, a public information campaign among our jurisdictions along the East Bay Hills. And since we have our county coordinators working on this, that this would be something we could look at partnering and on and having it be sort of a voice of all the jurisdictions, both counties, the cities along this urban interface. And we do work in the process of collecting the dues on top of the funding we have. So we could, I think the idea of saying up to 50,000, it may not take that depending on other resources that we get. So that's sort of just the item before us. Susan, did you want to add something? Were you wanting to add anything? Okay.
I do have some questions about, I'm assuming this is a motion.
It would be a motion.
It would be a
right,
motion.
Yeah.
Because of the way we're structured, we're not a nonprofit. Many of the grants that are available.
But we are a public, well, we are under now the fire district's fiscal agency status.
There are some grants that are only available to nonprofits.
Right.
And we have the potential to possibly partner with some of the fire safe
Correct,
councils
right, yeah.
of the Alliance,
Right.
which is nonprofit. And I don't want to say this $50,000 has to be used only
Right.
over here. I would suggest that that you authorize up to $50,000 for use to create a public information campaign, period. And that as we proceed, we'll figure out how much is going where.
When you say public information, you're talking broader than just Zone Zero. In other words,
We could say, education regarding Zone Zero and home hardening and a
Right.
public information campaign. But my point is that if we say the 50,000 has to be used only with the county coordinator.
No. I don't think that's what we said.
No.
That
Okay.
that it would be 50,000 and that, but we don't want to do this in a silo. If Contra Costa and Alameda are doing something, let's have a discussion about what that looks like.
Yes.
Among this entity of coalition, the two counties, and that we would authorize up to 50,000 to be used from our standpoint.
Yeah, and as president of the Claremont Canyon Conservancy, which is a 501c3 organization, there is an option for using that or other 501c3.
We could work if we were trying to attract other funding that would be better provided to a nonprofit. We could partner with one of the fire safe council.
Yes.
That's correct. Okay. All right, questions?
And I would like to suggest that someone on your board make a motion.
I will after we have questions. Yeah, go ahead. Yes. Supervisor.
Yes, this is incredibly important work. And I think, similar to my comment earlier in terms of thinking holistically about all the different strategies, all the tools in the toolbox for mitigating wildfire and minimizing any potential damage. I am interested in figuring out if it's also possible to include some other strategies in this education, in particular leave early.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm seeing some nods.
So we could
Thank you.
have the motion be a public education information campaign and that address, in fact, I'm just pulling up the identified areas of interest that as a governing board we talked about last year. 1, strengthen building and fire codes and adherence. 2, support science-driven regional vegetation and management priorities. 3, advocate for local, county, state legislation. 4, support evacuation and response programs. 5, secure new funding for regional priorities. In a sense, we're trying to achieve all of these objectives. So that this information campaign is sort of can be broad to look at those types of issues and to develop strategies and what funding we would need to do that. In a way, we're trying to do this regionally, right? I mean, that's what we're really trying to do, and we're fortunate to have most of the East Bay Hills jurisdictions here, and I think it's rather than each jurisdiction doing it separately, right?
Right.
Chair.
Any
Chair
other
Joy-
questions or yes.
Vice Chair Ramachandran has her hand up as well.
Okay, so we'll go to Zoom.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you. Just wanted to add to this conversation about, I support John Kaufman's proposal completely, and I wanted to just briefly share why I think this is really powerful. If we have just a second, I want to bring up a PowerPoint that I recently gave to the Alameda County Mayor's Conference. Supervisor Boss was there, Supervisor Joya had helped facilitate this. And I just wanted to share how it made an impact showing a 1-minute video on Zone 0. So it took quite a while to find something that was hard hitting, that was already out there. And this was done by this was presented by Cal OES. Let me see if I have privileges to share. Yes, I do. Can you all see my screen? Okay. Sorry, 1 second. But in short, this is a 60-second video that seemed to really get the attention of folks who were otherwise didn't know about Zone 0. The problem with this video is, of course, it's not specific to the East Bay Hills. I mean, you can see that pretty obviously from the video. Oh, why is this not playing? Sorry, everyone. But the point is, I can get this. There we go. Okay, so this is from Cal OES. As you can see, in the beginning, firefighters are lighting 2 exact flames, one on each side. The one on the left, no defensible space, wooden fence. The other side, 5 foot of free space, metal fence. And, I'm gonna zoom by. Time goes on. You see one side clearly burning faster, the other burning significantly slower with no damage to the actual structure. You see this one, it's accelerating with, the one with no defensible space. You go to the other side, it is virtually intact. And I'm gonna,
That's powerful.
yeah.
Visual is good.
This is the kind of thing that I think could really be hard hitting. And then I continued to show a few homes in the Altadena fires in Malibu where you see one house on the block not burning. But that visual of Zone 0 specifically really seemed to get folks' attention. And if we make things like this focused on the East Bay Hills, more urban context, this is the kind of thing that can convince people to clear to clear 5 feet of space and to change their roofs and gutters or to change a fence. Obviously, there's a range of things from least expensive to most expensive, but it's the kind of thing that I just recognized on that day actually worked. Because it was a room full of people, many knew very well about Zone 0, and others had not really heard it before. And this seemed to really convince folks that it's something that makes a difference.
Great. By the way, I failed to acknowledge we have an elected official here, East Bay Mud Director Joey Smith. Thank you for sitting through and listening to this discussion, Joey. You control the commodity that is most needed to fight a fire and the infrastructure to deliver that commodity. So thank you for being here. Yes. So other comments on this? Yes, Sohaila.
I just wanted to bring up that Marin County has been very successful in public education with their Ember Stomp, and to the point that I see our residents are going there. Maybe we want to
learn from what they're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I think it is good learning from our neighbors and what they're doing. I remember when I came back from Canada last summer, there was an amazing, I picked up from Fire Canada, whatever it is, a really great printed material about Zone Zero and all the things, and it was like, that's national, right? It's just was a great publication. I think I gave it to our fire chief. I still have an extra one around somewhere, but it's great having one piece of information. Right now, I see so many pieces from different fire districts, and they're all similar, but they have some different things. And if we're all doing this, the idea is, how do we work together on one campaign, right? And how do we learn from others? There's a lot of good stuff happening already in the East Bay. Yes. And Berkeley's leading the way on a few things.
Thanks for saying that, because I was a little hesitant to brag.
No, Berkeley is. Feel free to brag. This is a bragging space.
Well, it's not about bragging, but I did want to say that, as you all, I think, know, we actually mandated Zone Zero restrictions for some very high fire danger parts of Berkeley. And so we have to have an education campaign. And so there's a lot of work. Chief Arnold had to go, but we have a lot of resources. We have that wonderful video. And so, yeah, feel free to hit us up if you want ideas. And
yeah,
I had one more thing, but it's okay.
No, go ahead.
I forgot.
Okay. Any other comments? Public comment? Yes.
So the Board of Forestry has been meeting. We don't yet know where they're going to come down. We don't know how they're going to define Zone Zero, what they're going to allow, or what they're going to disallow. And so right now, in terms of regional approach, we don't have the specific information. We know what Berkeley did, but that's probably more than most jurisdictions are going to be willing to push for. They have to make their decision by the end of December. So we'll know that. Right now, they're working on what's a specimen tree, what is it protected, isn't it protected, where can it be? That very, very specific and detailed information. There's been a lot of pushback. There are people who claim that there are fire suppressant plants. There are people who claim that there are fire resistant plants. There's competing science, presumably. We tend to trust Professor Gollner and UC Berkeley studies, but people have cherry-picked other studies to contradict that information. It's been a very, very controversial process. The thing that we realize we don't have is a massive education campaign to counter all of this. And that's why I came to the conclusion that that's really where we should be focusing our energy, is on an education campaign.
I absolutely correct. Absolutely agree with you. Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, public comment, and then we'll go ahead. Supervisor, go ahead.
Just following up Susan's comment, I heard Senator Arreguín submitted a comment letter to the Board of Forestry. Perhaps individual fire safe councils have we as a body advocated with the Board of Forestry?
We've written a few letters. I don't think, Robert, we've done one on that. We should get information. We could do a letter. If it meets with our platform, which it does, yes, we can do that. Thank you. Let's look into that.
This may be controversial to say in a room filled with public officials, but
say it. It's okay.
But regardless of what the state decides to do with Zone Zero, we know what the facts are. And I think we should feel free to advocate to homeowners, urging them to know the facts and take action. And I don't think we need to be very strict about what the state decides is Zone Zero or not. The facts are known. All plants burn, for example.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
I remembered.
Good. Okay.
This is actually, I don't know that much about it. I think my colleague, Councilmember Blackaby, has been working on, who succeeded Councilmember Wingraf. He's been working on sort of like landscape architect designs of beautiful, easy to implement Zone Zero projects. And I think that's an important element because, you know, you can scare people and you should, because it's scary, but it's also helpful to include with that. Like,
Yeah.
you could look how nice it could be. Look how possible it is. I mean, people imagine the worst. They imagine this terrible concrete slab around their house. And there are, I believe, I'm a little bit out of my element here, but I think that Councilmember Blackaby was working with some landscape architect students at UC Berkeley to put together
That'd be
some
great. That
drawings.
could be part of a public information campaign. And I know Joey and I have talked a little bit about East Bay Mud because, you know, East Bay Mud puts out a very good drought resistant landscape book that's actually sold in nurseries and bookstores. And I was on the East Bay Mud board in the 90s when that came out, and it really moved people to see that drought resistant landscaping can be beautiful and great. And I think East Bay Mud's been looking at how to incorporate the fire piece of it as well. I mean, East Bay Mud, you know, already has this sort of drought resistant kind of publication. And I think moving toward including fire resistant, obviously zone 0, we don't want anything, but it helps people visualize what can be done. And so maybe having some further conversations, Joey, with East Bay Mud about that. So it has drought resistant and fire resistant to the extent there is landscaping, not within the zone 0 area, but around a house to show that it looks beautiful and visualize that. So we'll follow up with that too. Yeah. Yes, council member.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the landscaping, we did have the UC Berkeley Landscaping Department and the students come to our fire workshop event with Assemblymember Buffy Wicks, and it was included in the PowerPoint slide. So maybe you want to get a copy of that PowerPoint and add it to the website.
Great. All right. Any other public comment? One more? Okay.
Hello, Jim Parrott. Under good of the order, perhaps, a video was just released.
Former fire chief. You were the former Pinole fire chief. Yes.
A video just released a few days ago on YouTube regarding the Berkeley fire, not the 1991 fire, not the 1964 fire, but on September 30th of 1923, 640 homes of that particular fire. It's under the history guy. It's very well done, probably 10 or 12 minutes long, and I'd recommend in your meetings and so forth, or your public access, you might mention that. And there are many parallels 102 years later. So I think it's worthwhile to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, what I'll do is I'll make a motion in listening to what we all said. That's to allocate up to $50,000 to develop a public information education campaign on our high priority actions, including Zone 0 and other strategies to protect communities from wildfire, and working with the Alameda and Contra Costa wildfire coordinators on that effort. Did I capture that? Okay. And then we can have more discussion about that. We'll start working on that.
Second.
There's a second by our Hercules council
Can I have
member.
a friendly amendment?
Sure.
You said zone 0, but
And other things. I did. Yeah. I did. Yes. Definitely wanted to make sure it included other things.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Can we have roll call? I will do roll call. Yes. This is the chair and clerk all in one. Alameda County,
Yes.
Contra Costa, yes. City of Berkeley,
Yes.
City of El Cerrito,
Yes.
City of Oakland,
Yes.
City of Pinole is not here. City of Richmond,
yes.
City of Hercules.
Yes.
All right, item passes. Okay, moving on, future meetings and agenda items. We had some good ideas. It looks like one was discussion of maybe some proposed legislation. Another was, we can fine tune this, other types of holistic strategies that we may want to discuss and recommend. Those were two that I heard. other ideas as we set future agendas? We've heard evacuation, or other things includes evacuation and things like that. Yes.
I was just gonna say other things include
Yeah,
evacuation.
there we are. I anticipated that's what you said. So that's why I said that. Yeah.
And leave early.
Yes.
I don't know if it would be of interest to everyone. I know there's so many school districts in our two counties. But I am quite interested in making sure that our schools in the fire zone are safe. And I know a lot of them have
School
plans
issues, yeah,
already.
I like
Yeah.
that. On the Contra Costa side, it's basically just West Contra Costa Unified. You have a more complex network over there. Yes. Okay, we're good. Any public comment on this item? All right, so that's some direction. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Any public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, board member comments, starting supervisor. Any other board member comments?
I will just share that on Monday, I had an opportunity to see a wonderful film called In the Red. It was produced with Alameda County Fire Department and Local 55, and it basically follows a number of young people who participated in the Bay EMT program. And it's a very inclusive program that works with a diverse community of young people who are seeking opportunity to become EMTs and eventually possibly paramedics and firefighters. And it was just wonderful and very moving. So I encourage people to look it up, and hopefully there will be other opportunities to see it. Or if you're interested in hosting the film in your area together
Great.
with your safety folks, I'm sure they'd be interested.
Thank you. Any comments? Any other comments? Yeah.
Yeah, just one.
Brag again for Berkeley.
No, I'm not bragging. I just want to scare people more. We had this terrifying earthquake in Berkeley, and I live 2 blocks from the Hayward Fault, so that was fun. And it just made me remember that, we talk about wildfire and wind-driven events and trees and all this stuff, which is obviously important, but should there be a major earthquake in the East Bay, there's a high risk of fire that would have completely different dynamics. And I just wanted us to not lose sight
Thank
of
you
that.
for mentioning that, because it brings to mind one of my favorite topics. About 25 years ago, I and some of the cities, we did an ordinance in Contra Costa to require at time of construction or major remodel, the installation of an automatic shutoff valve, either seismic or excess flow valve to your house, that would shut off after a certain size earthquake, or if excess flow, if there's a leak. I think we're the only jurisdiction in Contra Costa to extend it for the unincorporated areas for time of resale. LA does that. I would encourage every jurisdiction, and we're glad to share our ordinance, because what we learned is, yeah, new construction and major remodel is great, but if you want to get more properties covered, you do it at time of resale. Now, the realtors didn't like that. We did it anyway. So in the unincorporated areas of Contra Costa that include Kensington, you and the realtors disclose this, you need to put in an excess flow or seismic valve at the time you sell your house. It costs a few $100 to install it, the part and the installation. That would be actually a really good ordinance for all of our jurisdictions to have, because it would at least limit, I mean, it's not going to stop fires when you have in the home, right? And where the weakest portion of the gas infrastructure is as it gets into the house. I have one on my house, and neighborhoods can, get a plumber to come and do it. We've worked with the plumbers union. So I'll put that out there. I'm glad to share the ordinance that we have in Contra Costa. So it requires in 3 situations, I think Hercules has one for new construction and remodel, because it was done back when we did it many years ago. But it does not include at time of resale. So if we could do that, we would just get more coverage. I think LA has time of resale as well. So thank you for mentioning that. I think that's really important to to raise and think about for our area. And I felt everybody here must have felt that earthquake. I know. Yes. I thought it was going to be a bigger one, actually. So the way it was going on. Yeah. Yes. Good.
I just wanted to thank you and East Bay Mud for the maps of the fire hydrants along with the pressure. There are some issues with it. I'm working with Chief Bachman and East Bay Mud. That's why I didn't put it on the agenda to understand if there's a problem or not, to what extent, and I'll bring back the results.
Thank you. I will send that ordinance out to everybody, by the way, what we have on that. Okay. All right. With a great meeting, we're adjourned a little after 12. Thanks.